Okay, here we are. Welcome everyone to our new series, and that is Learning Live with HashiCorp and AWS. All right, this is our first episode of many, and what we're going to be doing is, well, a lot of things. We're going to be working in AWS and in Terraform to build out this first pass, specific thing, and that's going to be a microservices architecture. But this is something that we're doing collaboratively between HashiCorp and AWS. So I'd like to introduce my wonderful streaming partner, Jenna. Jenna, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Jenna Pederson. I'm a senior developer advocate for AWS. I'm looking forward to digging into this. We've been chatting about it for a little while now, and looking forward to doing some things together and helping to give you all the best of both worlds.
Yeah. And I am Cole Morrison. I'm a developer advocate with HashiCorp, and I've spent so much of my career in context, at least the past few years, in context of DevOps with both HashiCorp tooling and AWS stuff. So they're very near and dear to my heart. So I'm really looking forward to walking through this entire journey that we've got planned out for you. So Jenna, why are we doing this, right? I'd love everyone watching this to kind of get an idea of why we put this together, why we're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, again, like the collaboration piece of it is to help to make sure that you have the pieces that you need for to solve the problem of building out a microservice. And long term, where we're going, I don't know if you want me to start talking about that yet, but long term, where we're going, we want to make sure that you know how to use when you're building out microservices with AWS, you know how to use the HashiCorp tools to solve some of those problems. And so that's really why we're here. And yeah.
I mean, that's exactly it, right? It's going to be better if we have multiple experts here, because I by no means am an AWS expert. I can speak on Terraform, and so having Jenny right here is going to do a lot for us. So that way you don't just see me stumbling through the AWS docs, and Jenna won't have to stumble through the Terraform docs while we get that stuff done.
I think the other thing that I want to mention here is we really want this to be very informal. I'm not always going to know all the AWS stuff. I assume Cole isn't going to know all the Terraform or the HashiCorp stuff. So we're here to learn along with you. And that's what the chat is for. So if you have questions, please drop them in there for us. And that'll make sure that we are giving you what you need and helping you to solve the problems that you need to have solved.
Yeah. That's a really good way to put it. That's why we put the word live in here. Maybe we'll change that at Halloween to like undead or something, but for now it's live. And the whole point being that while we're going through this, if we're going to try and stay sort of mid-level, we'll go deep where we need to, but if there's something that sparks your interest that you really want to go down and dig into, just tell us. We'll stop. We'll do it. If not in this episode, in a future episode. So let's go ahead and talk about, well, actually, before we get to that, Jenna, I do know at some point you had and yes, this sessions will be recorded. We will have them up on YouTube, every single one of them. We'll put those in there with chapter markers as well, so you can skip to the sections that you want to. But real quick, Jenna, I know that you mentioned you had some sort of survey or whatever that you want to put out. Did you want to touch on that now or later?
We can definitely mention that right now. So I'm not going to post a link to it yet because we haven't done anything yet. But ultimately, we want your feedback. At AWS, we are very customer obsessed. Almost everything that we build is based off of feedback that we get directly from customers. And today, that's you. And this live stream, this co-live stream, it is no different than that. So we want to make sure that what Cole and I are doing during this first episode and in future episodes is what you need. We're touching on the topics that you need. We are making sure that we are including the right people. We are including the right technologies, all that kind of stuff. So any feedback about what we're doing, the products that we're using, services that we're using, whether it's actual product feedback, like that is also very useful to us. We can take that back to our teams and make sure that your feedback is heard. So I will we'll drop a link in chat in not quite yet in a little bit in a couple of times throughout. I'll have a QR code that you can scan as well, because sometimes that's a little bit easier. And yeah.
Sweet. That sounds good. Yeah, that'll be perfect. That way, we aren't just doing what we think is best. We can adjust accordingly. Okay, so big picture for this series, what are we going to be building? Obviously, I've got some pretty pictures that I'm going to show and the like, but Jenna, I wanted to hear it from you. We've talked about it for like a month. This first happened. We all got together. We had a Fellowship of the Ring at reInvent, where we first discussed everything there. But what is this? What are we building? What are we heading towards here specifically?
Yeah, so as the title of this episode states, I think it's something like starting with the foundations of microservices architecture. We're going to basically, we want to start with the foundations, but we want to take it a little further and explore how a service mesh can solve some problems for us, specifically using ECS on AWS and using Console on the HashiCorp platform.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, there's a great question in chat. We will be building this with Terraform, but you could also do this with CloudFront, or not CloudFront, but CloudFormation.
Yeah, and quick shout out to Mark Cohen, one of my earlier students. How's it going, man? And so that's exactly it. We're gonna be, and it's not just, we've got this early side of things, right? We're going to first build out this microservices on AWS ECS with Terraform first, without a service mesh, right? That's going to be this first chapter. And then the second chapter, we're going to take what we've done, refactor it, and transform it into a service mesh to show, that natural progression, right? Because if you're beginning from scratch, or if you're already where you are and you're looking into something like a service mesh, you probably don't have that all in place. And something Jenna and I talked about, we've thought about, well, what if we just start from that first, the end of chapter 2? What if we say we've already got an architecture and then just go straight into service mesh from there? Why did we decide to start all the way from scratch, Jenna?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, we want to make sure that you are able to see that full picture. We don't want to just solve half the problem and show you how to solve half the problem, because ultimately, at least I know for when I'm searching for whether it's a blog post or a video, and I'm trying to solve this bigger problem, when I only find a chunk of it, that's not always as helpful for me. And so really being able to start from the beginning, laying the foundation, we're going to, like Cole said, we're going to touch on how to actually create your Terraform project from scratch. We're going to talk about some of the best practices of organizing it and the workflows there. And if we already have that set up and built out, and that's what you're jumping into, then it's really hard to kind of get those foundations and get those best practices.
Yeah. So avoiding the cooking show, all right, so I've already gone ahead and baked this whole thing. Now we'll just put the icing on top, right? No, exactly. we're gonna bake the whole thing, right?
Right.
So perfect. Yeah. All right, and yes, we will have the Git repo up. We will update that after each episode. And then for the Terraform modules, this is something that I want to touch on. We have a fabulous number of wonderful modules. We even have some big module creators here in the chat. I think I saw Anton. How's it going, man? We are going to build everything on our own, though. We want you to see the guts and the innards, everything, all of it, the good, the bad. We'll hide the ugly. No, I'm kidding. We'll go, we'll go to that too. But we do want to show everything, but we will touch on modules when we get into it. But let's go ahead and see where we're going in this first section. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, Jenna? I think that sounds great. Okay, actually, so before we jump into it, just speaking of chat, there are a few people on both sides, the HashiCorp and the AWS side, that are there to, they might be able to help answer your questions if you have them in chat. And if not, we'll try and answer them live on the stream, or we'll point you toward some resources that can be helpful. So please please use that chat, because that's otherwise it just feels like we're talking at a wall. So yes, please talk to us.
Which is funny because we're literally talking to a wall, which is
Yes, exactly. Okay, should I share my screen?
Well, what I was gonna do is
Yeah, where do you
actually
want to
show
start?
the architecture stuff in
Excellent.
the ending demo first, right? And then we're gonna this just to show people where we're headed, the kind of like the answer to this first thing. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah. And yes, both to those questions, the session's being recorded. We will put it back up later, and we are going to provision ECS. Though this is we realistically, since we're going to do everything, we won't get to that today, but that will be in for later. So I'm going to share my screen here, and we see my wonderful little diagram that is very oversimplified. But obviously, there's going to be more than 2 subnets that we'll have, but I could only fit so many things in this diagram. In essence, what we're going to be doing is creating this microservices architecture right here, where we are going to have a client service that is reached from a public application load balancer on AWS. And behind it are going to be 2 services, fruits and vegetables. In fact, we're going to show you how to add more. Like, we can have an entire grocery store of services to the right and left here if you so choose, all connecting back to a database, which I guess I should have called groceries at that point. Yeah, and we're going to build every single piece of this. And Jenna, what are your thoughts on what we're doing here? What do you think of my artwork here?
Great. I think produce works just fine right now. As soon as we add in like cereal or something, then we want to change it to groceries. So what we have is great.
Yeah, and yes, this was made with cloudcraft.co, as someone mentioned in the chat. It is a great tool because drawing cubes, right? That's about where my art skills in. So we'll leave it at that. Okay, so to show you the live demo so you can actually see where we're going, this is going to be focused on the infrastructure, on the DevOps side of things. And, depending on where we go, maybe we'll even take a look at a GitOps or some other stuff like that. But what I'm going to show is the actual application all up and live. So we know that we have this this front-end service, this client service, right? And this is what I'm hitting right here in the browser, right? This is showing that we are connecting to our client, which is then connecting back to those fruits and vegetable services that are all connecting to the database, right? And if we want to look at the raw payload, we can see here that there's a lot of information of this is what that payload looks like just in raw JSON format. Now, I know that from a UI perspective, it's not the most incredible thing, but I do want to say, hey, Nick Jackson, thank you so much for making fake service. And if you are creating infrastructure and need something to just scaffold these services out, fake service is amazing for this. And that should allude to the fact that we are using a fake service here. We're not going to actually make a fruit and vegetable service. Instead, we're mocking these in the back so that we can focus on the infrastructure. So that is where we are going to be going. What are your thoughts on all that, Jenna?
Can you go back to the UI? Yes, that one.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what client means in the context of this? I just want to make sure that people understand where that's not necessarily like the front end client, like your browser client. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit more about the difference there and how that plays a role here?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So from the perspective of this demo, the client, when we think client side, especially if you begin in web development, you think the front end application, right? This does happen to have the front end application, but the client here is the entry point to the rest of our services. This is the thing that's going to reach out to these services that sit in our private subnets and consumes them for us and pulls them together. And so ultimately, this client would be something that like pulls all these different services together and makes them into something usable for you, the end user. And that end user may be a real human being. It may be an API, right? It could be an application user. It could be an integration or something like that. But either way, this is what's being exposed publicly, whereas everything else is exposed privately. Now, I'm not sure if I answered your question, Jenna, so I would love to hear your thoughts on it as well.
That was the answer to my question. I just wanted to be clear on what role that's playing there. So perfect.
Yeah. And we are going to talk more about microservices here in just a second, for sure. But again, we're going to go deep where we need to go. But again, for the development of the application side of things, that won't be the focus. But if you do have questions, we'll see how to set these up, because we'll be using containers, of course. So we'll see how to get those all configured. And of course, during that time, if you need to, we can dive deeper. So let me head back to my diagram here. We covered it at a high level, what we're going to be building in this first section, but I wanted to cover the why, right? Why microservices, Jenna? Like why even look at that, right?
Yeah. That could go a number of different ways.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the reason why we are focusing on microservices is the ultimate goal of, we want to get to the point of being able to solve the problem of having many different services, and how do we manage that programmatically, both for the size of our team, but also for potentially the size of our code base and the scalability across potentially different regions, or different areas, whether you have on-prem data centers, that type of thing. So ultimately it was, we knew we needed to start here if we wanted to get to this other end. So that's why the microservices. I know there was a question in chat a little bit ago about whether we're going to touch on using console with Lambda. And I think the answer is, as part of this series, the answer is probably no. But when I throw up the survey link in a little bit, providing that feedback, that if that's something you'd like to see, that's very useful for both of us. Whether it's something that we end up doing as part of this, or it's something that we do independently with each of our respective teams. That's really good feedback for us to know that is a problem you want to have solved, or see how that's solved. So no for the short term on that one.
Yeah. I also see a lot of people wanting to see boundary, and yes. There's obviously going to be parts of this that aren't as optimized as they could be, but thing is, we got to pick and choose our battles. And when we get into the jungle that is service mesh, not that it's a disorderly jungle, but it can be quite the safari. We're gonna be glad that we've chosen to focus on what we've done, right? It's kind of like you can go to a buffet, you can get every single thing there. You can. That plate's going to get pretty full. So we're trying to stay a little bit focused here. Now, going back to that microservices thing, right? For me, and for a lot of folks, one of the big things that'll come into a point of conflict is moving away from the concept of that mono repo, right, Jenna? The whole encouraging the development based on the domain-driven design. So what should each service be doing something specific to the business, right? And then also creating a communication standard so that we can add services without having to go back and make everything work together. Because if you worked in one monorepo, it has its strengths, it has its weaknesses, just like microservices have their strengths and their weaknesses. But right, doing it like this can give your teams, especially large teams, large organizations, a lot more agility. Which brings us to the service mesh piece. So, Jenna, what are your thoughts on service mesh here?
So when we started talking about this collaboration together, I had like high level understanding of what a service mesh is. So our conversations have really they have helped me understand it a little bit better and some of the benefits. And so I'm actually gonna be learning right along with all of you about like the actual implementations of service meshes. I think one thing, like as we start talking about some of these solutions and technologies that you can use to solve these problems, we want to make sure that you're able to solve your problem. And so it's not going to be the answer. A service mesh isn't going to solve, it's not necessarily going to be the answer all the time. And so we really hope to, and same thing with microservices, we really hope to be able to give you the information about them in order to let you have enough information to make the decision on which is going to be the right route for you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that we did talk, right? The learning while with a service mesh, the thing that we're doing is that comes into play when we start looking at microservices. And by the way, if my internet connection just starts going and I turn into a PowerPoint presentation, please tell me, and I will go back to repeating.
Yeah,
but the service mesh,
it's
what this is
a little bit, but I think you're okay.
Oh goodness. Okay, well,
it's better now. It's better now.
Yeah. But in essence, when we start adding services through a microservices-based architecture, we're going to have overhead, right? And we're going to see that as we build this out. When you create a new service that's internal, for example, you're going to need a number of things. You're going to need another load balancer for that service. If you want to make it scalable, you're going to need all of the firewall rules, and you're going to need a number of other things. What a service mesh is going to do is it's going to give us this standard, an easier way to connect all these services together. And yes, it's going to take some upfront foundations, and it's something that we're going to see. But once that's in place, like with microservices, we get more agility out of all of that. But in essence here, right, the ultimate workflow that I hope that we get to is this idea of that we've got this new world where you want to add a service that's self-contained, that adds to your overall applications that you're serving, and any team can go and do it with any language that they want to do, and they just hook it up and they're good to go. I mean, that sounds pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Okay, but grand plans, right? What is that quote? Everyone's got a plan until they get hit in the face. I think that was what's his face? The boxer. Either way, I feel like that applies to DevOps too. You draw up this big plan and then you go and you do it the first time. And yeah, Mike Tyson. There we go.
Mike Tyson. Thank you, Kunal. A couple of things I want to touch on in chat. Nico is asking in which languages are the microservices written. Today, we're using this thing called fake service, which means that we are not actually writing anything. It just spins up a little service for us. But that means that you can write it in whatever language you want. Whether that's JavaScript or Go or Python, that is up to you. This is ultimately, we want to show how it all plugs together within AWS using Terraform and eventually pulling in console. Another question that's in chat. I'm not sure I can answer this, but this is from Jojman08, and I know this is someone on your team. Do you want to introduce her and
yes,
the question?
Yes. So Jotman, first up, that stands for Jack of all trades.
Master
of none. Yeah, I know, right? That's
nice.
That's cool. And that's Rosemary Wong. She's actually been my Jedi Master in my console journey. And we do another series which is getting in the console. And she's asking, what does service mesh have to do with microservices, and could I still use it with any set of applications? So I think that was asked before I went into the thing, but just to reiterate the answer here, the service mesh, what it's going to do is create a communication standard, a security standard between all of these services you're adding that are these microservices, so that they have a common way to interface with each other. And the interface isn't just how they talk to each other. It's not just the API, right? It's a set of standards so that when you add new services, they all know how to get to each other. They all know how to authenticate and authorize with each other, for example. And that's something that we're going to see console can do. But again, that is something that is quite a bit down the road. So did that answer the question? Hopefully. Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. And yes, I will try and pace my speaking. I know I can get into freestyle mode at times. I apologize. Between that and my PowerPoint level internet, I should probably really pay attention. Okay, so let's see here. Do we look good to move forward on the next part, Jenna?
I think so. Yeah, I think we are. Good to get into it.
Yeah. I mean, we've got a good number of questions here. Impact of service mesh has on latency. Well, of course, when you add in something in between, like first up, to answer that question, we will have to look at the service mesh, like what the components are of that and how it's working. So that's probably a question better used for there. As for console versus AWS app mesh, Jenna, you may have some more onto this, but the whole thing is we just want to see these different tools, right? Like there's no like something's better than other, right? Obviously, there's CloudFormation as an infrastructure as code tool, and CloudFormation is wonderful, right? And there's also Terraform. This isn't a and or, like an or battle here. This is sort of, what flavor do you want to work with? This is going to fit some teams. This is going to fit some organizations, right? So this is just our view on that. Did you have some thoughts on that?
No, that's exactly it. Again, I mentioned it earlier, but like we're trying to get the right information in front of you so you can make that decision. So yeah, that's cool. About all I have on that.
Gotcha. So we've got quite a bit to get through to today. And this is something that I want to say, if you are an advanced Terraform user tuning in, we are starting from the beginning, right? This first episode, because we're having to cover these foundations and because we're going to be covering sort of the beginnings of a project and everything, you'll have to look at this more as a revisit to the fundamentals. But we didn't want to leave anyone behind, which is why we're starting here right from the get-go. And from that get-go, right, we're going to be covering a few things today as we code along. And what are those again, Jenna?
Yeah, so we're starting from, like Cole just said, we're starting from scratch. We're going to figure out how do we create this Terraform project, set up our terminal environment to be able to interact using Terraform with AWS resources. And then we're going to look at the project structure and just kind of go through like the different areas of the project and maybe some naming conventions. And then what else? I think as far as like laying the foundations, I think that's what we're going to be doing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And we're going to sort of, one of the things that I think will come of this really well is that first big thing we're going to be building is a virtual private cloud, right? And that always is sort of the foundation for anything you're going to do on AWS, right, Jenna?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And along the way, we're going to learn Terraform to an extent. We're not going to dive deep in it, but I don't think we need to, because we talked about that. And the thing is Terraform is not a full-blown programming language. It is a configuration language. If you can do a programming language, you can probably learn Terraform in like one sitting, which is pretty much what we're going to do. So let's go ahead and get to it, right? Does that sound good?
Yeah.
So we've got some requirements here, and now this is the only slide that I have. I know slides are not good, but I do want to show people exactly what they need to have set up to follow along with us here. So let me go ahead and find this slide. And I'm just going to add this. You're going to need Terraform installed, an AWS account, the AWS command line interface installed, an IAM user with permissions set up, and then your CLI set up with those permissions. Now, we're not going to really go into those things because those are very well paved paths. So hopefully you don't have any troubles there. But if you do, of course, just reach out to us and we'll get back to it.
Yep.
Any comments on?
I think, so we're starting on essentially step number 6. But we can, I know you had a link for, just trying to think if I have it saved somewhere, a link for setting up on the Terraform side, like setting up the CLI. So we'll see if we can find that.
Yeah, I actually have all those links. I can just start posting them in the chat. That'll probably be helpful. Let me navigate through my long thing of here we go, of links. So here is the Terraform install link. Here's how to create a user, an IAM user, and the CLI setup. I'm just sort of spamming links here. And so a couple things as I'm seeing here in chat, just note we are streaming to 3 different platforms right now, to YouTube, to Twitch, and to LinkedIn. So some of the responses that we're having are coming from those other platforms. Unfortunately, we don't have something set up at the moment that will unify those in one thing. That's definitely on the to-do list. And then the article that you were talking about specifically, Jenna, here is the one for authenticating Terraform with the AWS CLI in a variety of different ways, which I think is what you were asking about.
That's exactly what I was looking for, because I needed to use that yesterday when I was testing through all this.
Yeah, yeah. But for those of you who are following along, right, if you have the AWS CLI installed and you have your default profile set up, you're actually good to work with Terraform, right? And we'll see that. I know that Jenna, you've gone ahead and used the profile in the background, correct?
Yep, I have.
Yeah. And to the other platforms, you know what? Let me post real quick the other platforms that we're streaming on, just so that everyone can see. Here is the YouTube one, and then the Twitch one.
And while he's doing this, like, we can see all your comments. We just can't respond in all the different places. So that's part of why we've got Darko's out there. I can see he's in LinkedIn helping out, and Rosemary's helping out on Twitch. And there might be a few other people joining that are helping out too. So we'll try and get you all set with links and stuff. One thing I would like to do after this, and we've already mentioned that we will be pulling in, we're recording, we'll pull this onto the HashiCorp YouTube channel after we're done. One thing I would like to do is collect all these links and these resources, especially as we're building them up through the series, and any of the code that we're building as well, and collecting them into a page that we can share with you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Are we ready to start coding now?
I think so.
You ready?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to throw your screen onto the stream here.
I think I'm ready.
Yeah. All right. So blank slate. So much potential. So much unknown.
So I'm going to be writing the code, and Cole is going to drive for me. He's basically going to be telling me what to do here. I'm going to ask some questions as we go along, and as we get into the VPC stuff, I can help explain stuff there from the AWS perspective. And so that's kind of how this is going to work. We'll, as we get into another episode or so, we'll switch back and forth so that it's you get to see a little bit of both of us type.
Yeah, it'll be great. You can see both of our fingertips and tips in action. Okay, so first thing, systems check. We have Terraform installed.
Yes.
Yep, we've got the perfect. Awesome. So screen, I think is can you maybe try resharing your screen real quick?
I can try. I think.
Oh, it kind of like added. It kind of did it there.
Yeah.
And you know what? Let's just go right to your code editor. Let's just share right to that so that we don't have to do the repaint thing.
Oh, are we going to be in? Sure, we can do that.
Yeah. Oh, there. I could see that. It seems like resharing it fixes the paint thing, by the way. So if we ever have a hiccup here at this beginning, we'll just reshare, and it seems to fix it just fine. The joys of streaming. Yeah.
Do you want me to?
Let's just go right to VS Code.
Okay.
Yeah, does that work?
Maybe it's not showing up in my list. So.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. Oh.
Can you just share your whole?
Nope. Hang on.
Okay.
I'll just share. I'll have to share the whole screen. I'm not sure why it's not showing that.
Yeah. Maybe
or
that'll.
I have it open. Maybe that's why.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay. So.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we can see enough of it here. Hopefully it will, as we start coding, repaint it correctly. So first thing here, we have this empty directory, right? And the first thing I want to talk about is the concept of a Terraform project. What you're looking at here is the Terraform project. We're going to make a collection of .tf files, Terraform files. And in those files, we're going to define AWS resources. Terraform is going to then go and make those resources, right? And that is it. That's as simple as it is. No matter how far we get down into the code, it is that simple. If you make a .tf file in this folder and it's got Terraform code in it, Terraform is going to pick it all up and it's going to make it for us. So the question then comes from there is probably, well, what about the order of the files? What about what you name the files, right? Well, we leave that very flexible so that you can have your way with how you go about organizing those things. But there are some well-paved patterns. So why don't we begin with our first file here, and that's going to be main.tf. Will you create a main.tf file, Jenna?
Yes, I can do that.
And as we go, if you have any questions, like totally ask.
Also, if there's something you can't see, specifically, I know the repainting thing is happening. We're trying to figure that out as we go. I will try and be aware of what's happening. But as you are seeing the screen, if the font needs to be bumped a little bit or expanded or whatever, just let me know.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. That's that. Yeah, definitely. We don't want anyone to not be able to see it here. So before we get deep into the project and creating resources, something to note here is this idea of what are known as providers. I'm going to post a link in the chat here. If I can copy paste, which apparently is hard to do. Here we go. And this is specifically for the AWS provider. In Terraform, we create resources, yes, but we do them through providers. And providers are Terraform's link out to a platform or an external service. And in this case, AWS has a provider that it does. Now, just for repainting purposes, why don't I just share my screen with that provider on screen? That way we don't have to worry about your code editor getting lost. Does that sound good?
Yeah. While you do that, I'm going to try switching over to Chrome and see if that fixes it. So that means I'm going to have to drop just for a moment, and then I will be back, and hopefully that will solve our problem. So
that works. That works. Yeah.
You're okay driving for just a moment.
Yeah, that works. I will run through the whole concept of a provider while you do that. Okay, yes, and my cat Josie says hello. So
hi, Josie. Okay, one moment.
Yeah. Okay, she'll be back while I talk about providers here. So on my screen, I have the AWS provider. And so the way to think about providers is, again, they provide Terraform. This is by analogy. They provide Terraform with the resources that you can then go and create in your code. Depending upon the providers you have there, those are the resources that you can make. We're going to be working with the AWS one, but we have a ton of different providers. We have a GitHub provider. We have a number of other ones that you can pull in and work all of these in the same code base, which is, one of my favorite parts of working with Terraform. So when Jenna comes back, what we're going to do is tell Terraform how to go about adding these things to telling Terraform that we need the AWS provider. And here it looks like she is back. So I'll go ahead and add her back in.
Hi there. Thank you.
Hello, hello. And let me just, does my thing look red and green to you here?
Not at all, no.
Okay, sweet. For whatever reason, it looks red.
Welcome to a live show, folks.
Yeah. Okay, now it looks normal on mine. So yes, so this is the AWS provider, and for every provider we have, so if we just go to the AWS one, this is what this one's going to look like. You're going to have an overview and then the documentation. And the documentation here is where you're going to spend a lot of your time working. And this is mainly going to be the provider that we work with through this series here. So tell me when you're ready with your code share, Jenna.
Yeah, I'm working on.
Okay, yeah, take your time.
I'm sorry, but I might have to. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you keep talking for one more minute? I have to restart Chrome now. So sorry about this. This is the next episode, number 2, is gonna go so much better because I'm gonna have all this worked out. So
of course,
we'll be right back.
Yeah. And if you're coming from a programming language, the way that I was able to think about providers is thinking about them like, modules, right? So like maybe like an NPM module or like a framework, something like that. You pull those in and they give you access to a lot of different functionality. The AWS one does that. We're also going to see how to use the TLS provider that'll let us create public and private keys. We're also going to see the random provider that just allows us to make random UUIDs, for example. So we'll see all of those things. And right here, in a nutshell, is how you go about doing that. We have our block with our required providers where we specify the name of the provider, the source, which will by default go up to the Terraform registry, and then the version, right? And this particular version and this particular symbol is going to pin it to the latest patch version. So let me go ahead and remove my screen here and add back Jenna's. Hey,
Yeah.
I can see
Okay.
your whole editor. That
This.
looks great. Oh, look at that.
It's not that it's not repainting, it's that I didn't have it expanded. So I think we're good.
Oh, it looks good now. It looks great. So I'm gonna send you that link here. Let me just push it to you over. I guess I'll just send it to you over Slack. If you would open that link and just show it on screen here so we can see what we're doing.
I already have that open.
Oh, amazing.
Right here. I was
prepared. So just to save us some typing here at the beginning, why don't we just go ahead and copy that whole block?
This
right?
first one.
Yeah, this whole thing, and let's just put it in just so we can get to a start now. Just so we can get a quick win here for people following along. Oh, good. All right, and then how about we'll leave the version where it is. We'll leave all of that stuff where it is. And just before we do anything, do you have any questions that we've got here? Does anyone have any questions?
No. I don't. Does the audience have any questions?
Actually, we do. We have, is there a good VS Code extension for syntax check and auto-generated blocks? We do actually have that. Would you like to install that, Jenna?
Sure.
Yeah. Well, go to VS Code. Yeah. Go to the extensions thingy. Yeah. And just search for HashiCorp Terraform. There it is. And just install that. That top one right there, I believe. Yep. And then if we, I think, okay. Well, I think you uninstalled it.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, I think you like installed it and then uninstalled it.
Super happy.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Install.
So install. Yeah.
Okay, now we're good to go.
Yeah, there we go. Now we can see the pretty syntax highlighting. To answer questions, RUP 12, what language is Terraform written in? Do you mean underlying? Underlying, it's Golang, but you write Terraform in HCL, which is HashiCorp Configuration Language. And then for the beginner versus advanced webcast, this is all, like, we are beginning from the beginning and we are going all the way to very advanced stuff. So this is an entire journey. Okay, cool. So in this here, we can see a couple of things. I kind of wanted to take a little bit of time on the language here because there's not a lot to it, right? This is readable. We can see exactly what's going on here. We talked about the required providers thing. You're not going to make this block often. You're going to update it with your providers. But the provider block that we see on line 11, that's how we talk about a specific provider we've required, and we give it defaults in different settings, for example, right? And so for this one, we're saying, hey, the region should be pinned to US East 1. And then finally, we have our very first resource down there, the AWS VPC, right? So any questions so far?
I think that makes sense. For
all right, cool.
Very simple VPC.
Yeah. And just for the ease, for understanding HCL, just the simple rundown is we always have the resource, we always have the data block, the type, right, which is just resource followed by block labels, which we have the AWS VPC and an example. And then inside of the curly braces, we have our arguments. And that is all there is to it. We'll nest some stuff. Things will look a little different here and there, but I mean, that really is all there is to the language, which is why it's pretty simple. I got
one question. So the AWS VPC specifically refers back to, this is a question, the VPC in this documentation, right? So if I wanted to go and look at which we might do this in just a moment, but I can see more information about. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I figured we just show them the quick up stuff of Terraform, and then we can take an in-depth look at those resources. But I just wanted people to see the quick workflow here, if that makes sense. Yeah, cool. So the next thing to do to kick all of this off is to initialize the Terraform project. So if you would go back to your shell and run Terraform init, this is going to create
This is going to pull down the modules and providers that we're using, get everything set up for us so that we can start working. And I know that the VPC is currently set to example. Yes, of course, we're going to change that, but I just want everyone to see what we've got there. So we've got that all set up. And then from there, we can go ahead and do our Terraform plan. And Terraform plan, what it's going to do is it's going to tell us exactly what Terraform intends to create. And answer the question, is it using your default AWS profile? It is going to use your default AWS profile by default. You can change the profile. Of course, you can even set the access keys explicitly in either environment variables or in the code itself. But let me repost that authentication document here real quick for you so that you can have that. And where is it? Yes, right here. Yes, session's being recorded. Okay.
Yeah. So while you're doing that, we are recording this. If you're not able to stick around or you missed part of it, it will be posted to the HashiCorp YouTube channel. And then again, we want to make sure that as we're going forward, you have some of the resources that we're talking about here. So we'll have a way to like aggregate all these links at the end as well.
Yeah. And what we're doing right now is we're just showing the core workflow of plan and apply just to see what this all looks like. And then we're going to dive into, of course, where these things are coming from, like where this resource coming from and how it's working. So if you'll run Terraform plan next in your shell, Jenna.
Tell me what Terraform plan does. We didn't talk about that one.
Yeah. So plan, what it's going to do is Terraform is going to do a number of things in the background, but what it's going to show you, the user, is exactly what it's going to go and create. And in this case, it's going to create the VPC. Now, as you see here, we only specified one thing in the code. We just said the CIDR block, but it's going to add a lot of other things, and that's because there are required arguments you have to pass to some of these resources, and then there's sensible defaults. And so we see a lot of these defaults being passed in. So that's what it's showing right here. So if that looks good to you, we can then do the next part, and that is Terraform apply, which is actually going to show us the plan first, and then it's going to actually go and make these things.
Where is it going to make these things?
It's going to make them in AWS. Now, This is always confusing when you pull down a Terraform repo and you're like, how is this getting there? Again, the reason this is working is because Jenna has the AWS CLI set up. She's got her profile set and those credentials loaded in, and Terraform looks for those when it sees the AWS provider and pulls them in for us.
Yep. So there's different ways of pointing it at a non-default profile. My profile name today is Jenna. I have just set an environment variable, and it happens to show up in my little command prompt. So that's how I know I'm on the right one. Can I type yes here? So this, again,
yes, you can.
I can see that this showed basically the Terraform plan that we just talked about. I agree with it.
Yep. And then you type yes.
I approve.
Yay. And now it's going and it's making all the things, right? And in this case, it's just one thing. And in fact, Jenna, would you head over to your AWS console and maybe we can see that?
Yeah.
Live. Yeah. And see, if you are coming from a development background, you see the loop we've got here. You make a change of the code, you plan it, you apply it, you check, you can use the console here as kind of your front end and see that it was indeed getting made. So does Terraform make the API calls to AWS, or then what? Well, ultimately it does make the API calls, but it's doing it, of course, through our code base and through our code base, and instead of just like doing it raw, right? And then as a complete Terraform noob, is Terraform mostly for setting up microservice architecture on varying cloud providers? No, it's for provisioning infrastructure in general. We're just choosing to make a microservice architecture because it's going to allow us to demo a lot of different aspects of both AWS and Terraform itself. Yeah.
Okay. I am in the AWS console. I'm going to go check out. So we created a VPC resource. I'm going to go check that out. Now, you'll see that there are two of them here. One of them is my default one that is already created for me with my account.
Yep.
I can see that this first one is the default. So the second one in this list is the one that we just created using our Terraform apply.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Now it's neat. It's super, super short. I know, simple. I know if you've been working in Terraform forever, this is This is nothing, but for me, the first time I saw this, it was like the first time you see it in CloudFormation as well. It's like, oh, wow, that's really nice. This is pleasant. I can see how I can start using this as a workflow. So why don't we hop back over to your code then?
Okay.
Yep. And there's probably two things we don't want here, right? And one of those is we probably don't want to hard code values, right? If we want things to be reusable, like say we hand this off and someone else wants to pull this code down and use, they probably want to be able to choose their region. They probably want to be able to set their CIDR block, right? That sounds reasonable. And the other thing is we probably don't want everything in this one file. So which task would you like to tackle first? Sort of making things variable-y, right? Or pulling stuff out into a different file, which I guess either one will do that.
Yeah, let's do the variables first.
Okay, so let's make a new file called variables.tf. Now, for those for people that are new, it's like, why are we calling it variables.tf? Because that's just what we're naming it. That's a convention, but we could call this like Jenna.tf. It wouldn't matter, right? We could put this all in the same file and it'd be fine. Terraform is going to read those all up. That's good. So what we're going to do now is make a variable, an input variable. And I've got a link here for that I will put in the chat here. And input variables are how we can make our code respond to different variables that we put into it, which is me using the word in the definition. But in essence, what we're going to do from a practical standpoint is we're going to make it so that we can pass in the region that the AWS provider is going to make stuff in, and also pass in a CIDR block to the VPC so that we can change that, or you can change it if you put on this code base. So let's go ahead and start with the, sorry, did you have something?
Nope, I'm good. Okay.
So let's go ahead and make that first variable. So in the variables.tf file, with that extension installed, you should actually be able to type VARE. All right, there it is. And then click, and then just the second option, push that, or yeah, enter. There we go. And that just autofills. Isn't that nice? Yeah. Now we can see everything we need. So let's make one for our default region. So name this however you would like. Okay, cool. So we'll call it region. And type string, that sounds good. There are a number of different types we can work with. There's numbers, there's lists, there's maps. There's a good number, but we'll just stick with the string for now. And let's give it a description. Nice. Nice. And go ahead and save that. Let's leave it. We'll set a value here next, but I want them to see the input side. So return to main.tf, and this is obviously what we're making it for. So the question is, how do we reference a variable? With a reference a variable, you're going to go ahead and delete that string right there. It's always going to be var. And then that label you put. And here we see it autofilling perfectly. So we don't even have to think. Yeah, right. And then we can save that. And let's go ahead and do another apply. And we're going to see something pretty cool here. So Terraform apply. And here, hey, look at that. Here's the input side. It's saying, what do you want this to be? Well, let's just do US East 1. Perfect.
I like that I didn't have to add that directly to the command line, the command, because like I don't always remember the syntax for stuff, and so having it prompt me, that's very nice. Yeah, and that's one of the cool things with input variables. And here we see after every apply, it'll give us some information. Of course, it'll say, hey, something has changed. What has changed? This is just after we made the resource, for example, a field for tags was added, which there are no tags, but it went ahead and updated our local state. And Terraform state is a conversation for a different time. So let's stay with this now. So let's go ahead and head back over to your code base. And we probably don't want to put input every time, because right now, if you run Terraform apply, it's going to ask you for that value every time. And even though that's nice, you probably don't want that, right? Yeah.
So let's head back over to variables. And in here, we can add another argument called default. And default is going to be exactly what you think it is, right? It's going to give the default value that you want it to have. And for that, we just put in US East 1. You got that perfectly right. And now we're good. You can run Terraform apply again if you'd like to see it. and we'll see that this time it'll just work. Yep, there we go.
No changes.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, no changes. So, and of course, it's we're doing a number of applies right now just to demonstrate some of these features. But okay, so let's go ahead and we've got the variables things set out here. So I guess the next thing is to do the splitting the VPC out, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So why don't we make a new file for our VPC here? What would you like to call it?
What if we just called it VPC?
Let's do that. Yeah, that sounds good.
I assume it needs a TF extension.
It does. It does
Okay.
need a TF extension. And then we can just go ahead and move that whole block over to the VPC file. Yeah. Yeah. It'll just forgets me every time. Yeah.
Do I have to I don't have to like reference the other file. It's gonna deal with all TF files in this directory.
Yep, exactly. So that's the thing, is there are Terraform providers, and then there is our Terraform core. And one of the big things that Terraform core does is it builds a dependency graph in the background. So even though we will eventually here have, I don't even know, hundreds of resources, let's cross our fingers, maybe it won't be that many. We won't have to tell Terraform how to deal with those, because it'll deal with linking those up and creating the relationships in the background. So why don't we go ahead and deal with the variable for this CIDR block?
Okay.
Let me go ahead and make one.
We want to turn it into a variable?
Yeah. So we can go ahead and just call this, let's just call it the VPC CIDR.
Underscore?
Yeah, let's do underscore. Yep. And then now we know that our intention is to make that.
Yes.
Yep.
Oops.
Yep. And then for the, go ahead and write whatever description you'd like, just probably the CIDR block for the VPC. Yep. And then for the default, let's go ahead and do a default value. I do want us to use a specific CIDR block here, and that's just because we're going to use a function later on to split the CIDR block up for us, so we're not subnetting ourselves. So let's do 10.255.0.0/20. Yes. And this is going to make us a smaller overall VPC, right? Because with the /16 subnet, we've got, there's like, I don't recall how many IP addresses there are on that, like millions or something. We don't really need that many. So we're just sort of going to pare it down here. And so now we've got that set up. Why don't we head back over to the VPC file? And instead of calling this example, why don't we call this something like main, right? So this is where I want to sort of point out the concept of block labels, right? When you're creating a resource, so this is a resource block. The first block, the first label here, we see AWS VPC, is going to it's going to be for whatever provider that those resources. So that underscore is saying this is an AWS provided resource. The VPC is what it is, and in this main block or the main label is just how we're going to reference it within our code, right? So that's all that is. Okay, any questions so far? In fact, there's a number of questions through here that I think we haven't that we've sort of missed here. Can you feed variables to the command line prompt too? Yes, you can specify a variable file. You don't with defaults in it, which we'll take a look at that next time. Are there recommended tools to make code quality or security checks? Yeah, we have a number of those, especially if you get into Terraform Cloud. We have our Sentinel that will let you look through the code and make sure that you're not doing anything bad, like leaving an S3 bucket open. Have you called it in the diagram? If you could restate that question, and I'll try to answer that. And to override default variable values from the command line, we'll see that later on when we make our variables file that just automatically pull things in. Okay, so we have that. Why don't we go ahead and do another apply here? All right, let's just do another apply, get all these changes updated. And Jenna, do you have any thoughts so far? What do you think? How you feeling?
I'm feeling like pretty comfortable at the moment. Yeah. I know it's going to explode in just a moment, though. Not explode, but like we're going to write a lot more code in just a moment.
Yeah, yeah. Well, how to enforce naming conventions, yell at people in your GitHub repo. No, I'm kidding. Don't do that. And, the best code editor to use for Terraform, I mean, I can't, if I touch that question, I'm going to make either Vim users mad, Emacs users mad, VS Code users mad. So,
code editor to use is the one that you want to use.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Caps lock. Okay, cool. So we see that we've destroyed the example VPC. In fact, would you scroll up in that apply in the plan? We'll see that right here. It tells us exactly what it's going to do, right? We have creations and our destroys, which is a really, which is on every single thing. I know we skipped the plan, but again, if you do Terraform apply, it's going to show you the plan. If you don't like it, you can just type no and it'll stop. So we see we're getting rid of the old one and we built up a new one.
Yep. Yeah, I kind of jumped right into that, but that's a good point, that you see what's going to happen and then you accept or decline it and then move forward. And so I typed yes right away. So
that's all good. I do that all the time. I'm like, yes, go. And then it breaks and I cry, but yeah. Okay, so we've established a really good core workflow, and this is actually going to be our foundation for everything else that we build the rest of the day. There is one more thing that I want to do. It's a newer feature in Terraform, but it's something that I want to go ahead and set up, and that is setting up default tags for everything that we make, right? Instead of making a tag, an individual tag for everything that we do, let's go ahead and get that set up. So let's go over to your variables file. And in here, let's make a new variable statement. So you can, or block, you can just use that little shortcut. Yep. And let's call this, why don't we call this default tags, default _ tags. Yeah. And for type, we're actually going to make this a map, because if we want more than one tag, we'll be able to add it here. But when we specify it as a map, we'll go ahead and write the description if you like. Yeah, perfect. We actually need to tell this what it's a map of. And this is going to be a map of strings. So on that type, would you do 2 parentheses and type string? So just, it would look like a function almost.
Wait, what am I typing?
Yeah,
like this?
Sorry.
Or like
no. No. Words. My bad.
Oh, words.
Yeah. No. Don't literally type that. Just go to, I'm messing with you now. Go to line 14.
Oh, on line 14.
Yeah, after the word map, and just do parentheses so it looks like a function, right? For example, and then just type string. Yeah, there we go.
There we go.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that before, so this is also new to me.
Yeah, of course. And type default. So this is going to be our default value. Yep, =, open some curly braces.
I knew those came in here somewhere.
Oh, yeah. And then this is going to be our map value. So we're going to have our key. Why don't we just call this project? Yeah. And then =. And then, we should come up with the project name here.
How about we call it, does it need to be, it needs to be in a string.
Yep.
I mean, that's the name of this, so.
Yeah. So here's what I want to ask you, since you're the AWS expert. When we throw this on a tag, is this going to be okay?
With the spaces?
Yeah.
Yeah, that should work.
Okay, perfect.
Let's try it, because I don't know, but I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, let's just try it. Sweet. So what we're going to do now is we could, for example, go to every resource and set a tags map, right? Like we could go to that VPC and we could do that, and we'll see that here in a second, because we're going to add a name tag. But to set tags across everything we make from this point forward, let's go ahead over to main.tf.
Yep. Okay.
And then right under in provider, so right under region, let's do a new line, and we're going to create a nested block, and that we're going to call it default_tags. Yep. And then here we're going to say tags as our key equals, and then that variable that we just made. Yeah, which is pretty neat. And then just save it. And then let's do another apply.
I won't type yes right away this time. I'll let you actually see the changes that we're making before I agree to them.
Yeah. We should also make it so that we can type right now. Like, do you want to apply it right now? Yes. And here, look, we see that this will be added to our VPC. It will be updated in place. Nothing's going to be destroyed. That's just telling us that that was a change from last time, which was just saying that we had no tags. Yeah. And then you can go ahead and do yes. And why don't we go check that out in the console?
Should I wait till it's done?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now I know for those watching, it's seeming like, oh, we're kind of taking our time here, but that's because we're getting the fundamentals down, right? Once you understand the concept of a variable, of arguments, of these different things, we'll be able to just focus on making the resources. So this will all go much quicker once we get past it. Okay, so let's check this out. When is the next?
What's that?
We got a question about the next session. So right now the plan is to do this every other. I have no idea what that error means.
Oh, okay, hang on.
Session expired. Okay, yeah. So our plan right now is to do this bi-weekly, if time permits. And as far as where it'll keep going, our plans are to get through this first part, the microservices architecture without service mesh, and then from there do it with service mesh. And then after that, I mean, that's where we're going to have this surveyed in, so we can kind of pivot if need be. So into VPCs, you will see our 10.255 one there at the top. So if we click into it, and there's tags.
Oops.
The text tab right there. Yep, and there we go.
And look at workspaces and the ampersand.
Yeah. So every resource we make from this point forward is going to have that tag. So let's go ahead and hop back over
to the code.
Yep. So this is the core workflow, right? The core like Terraform workflow. Now we are now at the point where we can start talking about what we're going to make conceptually. This first part was more, let's get the Terraform basics under our belt. And I feel like we've kind of gotten those, right? Jenna, how are you feeling on that?
Yeah. I mean, I might need some pointers as we go, but
yeah, absolutely.
I'm feeling more comfortable.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the actual AWS side, right? Like I want you to talk about it. And that is what we're building. Like, oh, VPC, what the heck is that, right? We've created one, but what is a VPC? And not only what is a VPC, what do we need to like what? Let's begin with that. What is that?
Yeah, so you can think of VPC stands for Virtual Private Cloud, and you can think of it as your own little private network in the cloud. And it's a way to separate your resources from other resources or from the internet. And what we're going to do here is, I can't remember all the different pieces that we're going to add, but we're going to set up what range of IP addresses different resources can live in this VPC, and that'll be the subnet. I think we're going to set up maybe an internet gateway. And that is going to tell us, that's going to determine which resources have access to the internet and which ones don't. What else are we going to have? I think we're going to have, I had a couple notes here on this. I don't even know where it went, but we'll have, Potentially we'll use security groups and network ACLs, and those are just, it's another layer of security that we can add to prevent the internet, things on the internet from being able to access our resources. I don't know. I'm not sure if we're adding that as part of this or not, but that's another kind of
Eventually.
important concept there.
Mhm.
Then I think the other big one is like route tables, and that helps
Mhm.
us figure out where traffic should go. So if we have
Mhm.
incoming traffic on a certain port and we want to route it to a specific resource on a different port, that's how we would use that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it. In fact, why don't we do this? Let's make a grocery list in terms of like comments. Could you open up your VPC file?
Yes.
Yeah, and then maybe in comments, let's just type exactly what we're going to need here, right? We're going to need the public route table and routes, right? Because that's going to
Yep.
be, yep. We're going to need the private route table and routes. So, I mean, it's just all the same thing. We're going to need the subnets for both public and private. Yep. And then we'll need an internet gateway so that we can reach outbound, because you talked about that.
Yep.
And then we'll also need a NAT gateway so that the resources in our private subnetwork are able to reach out to the internet and like install packages and stuff, for example, too. I think
Got
you
it.
mentioned like all that. That's everything you mentioned, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Well, I had mentioned the security groups and network
Yeah.
ACLs, but I don't know if we had planned for that. So
Yeah, we will go to those at some point, but probably not in this initial one. And by the way, someone asked from the LinkedIn stream, did you record this? Again, we are recording it. I actually posted a comment, but apparently from here I can't post comments to LinkedIn, so I'm just saying it on the stream.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, so let's take a quick moment to kind of reset. I think
Mhm.
and also I'm gonna share while we're resetting, I'm gonna share this. This is a QR code to the survey.
Mhm.
Um, I bet Darko, if he's still around, he can drop in the link to this into chat while we're talking here. But I think it would be good to kind of step back and just say a little bit about what we're building. For those who are maybe just joining, again, like we
Mhm.
mentioned, we're going to be recording this. We'll put it out on the HashiCorp YouTube channel when we're done.
Yeah.
So first things first, here's the QR code for the survey. There's a link in chat. This is so that we can make this series of content for you. We want to make sure that we are talking about the right things. We're addressing your problems. We have potentially, if you have any product or service feedback that we can bring back to our teams, that is super helpful for us as well to make sure that your voice is heard. So that's the survey. Do you want to just kind of give a very high level 1 or 2 sentence of what we're building here and kind of the stage
Yep.
that we're at?
Yeah, this is a good sort of halftime, I suppose. So microservices architecture on AWS in Terraform without service mesh. That is our first goalpost here. And then our second goalpost. So I suppose the next goalpost will be like our Two Towers movie. That'll be us moving towards service mesh and using that to connect our microservices instead of the way we're doing it right now. Cool. Is that good?
Yeah, perfect.
Sweet. Okay. So back to our, hopefully the QR code has been given
Yep.
sufficient
I can show it again in a little while.
Yeah, we can just show that again because we'll have plenty of speaking things. One thing I wanted to do
Sorry.
before we move on.
I'm going to interrupt. I
Yeah.
forgot to mention, as part of the survey, the first 20 of you will receive a $25 AWS credit. I would love to hear how you might use that if you get one. So that's another piece of feedback that you can either put in chat if you get it, or if you want it. Let us know how you're going to use it. Sorry to interrupt. I totally forgot about that.
No, that's good. I like the comment. Credits, yay.
Yeah. Okay, moving on.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. One thing I wanted to do was for VPCs, when people come into these, at least for me, it is like, first up, you get into AWS and it's like, what should you do first? It's like, oh, you should do cloud networking. It's like, oh, really? Wow. It's a lot of stuff, right? It can be quite a bit to try and digest if you're coming from a development background like I did. So I wanted to show something real quick, if that's okay with you, Jenna. It's an image, it's not a slide. And it's something that I've used for a number of years. Let me get this thing. Share my screen. This is an analogy that I've always liked to use when looking at subnets. And the way that I like to think about them is that your VPC is going to be like your city, and your CIDR block is a range of postal codes, right? So cool. So that's the first little mental model there. And then we have our roads that are going to be like our route tables, because they're going to be what allows traffic to move within our city, right? And then we are going to have our subnets, which are going to be like the range of postal codes, right? So the little blocks in our city. The internet gateway is going to be like an on-ramp to the internet, right? That's how you get there. And then the NAT gateway is going to be the on-ramp for the private sectors of our city that want to reach out to the internet as well. And then also the services are going to be the buildings. The security groups are going to be like security guards that sit outside the buildings. And then the network ACLs are going to be like gates to the blocks in your city, if in this weird dystopia where people can't get in. But that's just, I like giving that quick thing so that you can consume that and move forward in terms of working with networking.
I like that.
All right.
Thank you for sharing that.
All right. So let me put Jenna's screen back up on here and get my screen back rearranged. Okay, so we've got that there, but now we've got to go and build this VPC. This is somewhat intimidating if you haven't built a lot of them, because it's like, where do you start, right? Now, what do you name your files? What do you make first? So let's go ahead and get something that we've mentioned before, and that is, first up, I know you may be tempted here. Let's make a bunch of directories and start organizing stuff. But Terraform is actually going to ignore anything in a directory at first. And that's because we're going to use those for modules. Yeah, let me share that picture right real quick. I have so many Chrome windows open. I don't even, okay, here we go. Yes. So where do you even begin, right? Well, the directories, those are going to be for modules. It's going to ignore anything in a directory. So right now, Jenna, you can make like a directory for like Pokemon, for like Lord of the Rings, for all these things. And Terraform's not going to care. You could even put Terraform files in it and it's not going to care either. And that'll help us out a lot. But for now, everything's going to be in a flat structure, a flat file structure. And when you get to the point where your flat file structure is humongous, that's probably when you need to start looking at modularizing things, which will be something later. But also, you know, what resources do you make first, and how do you go about doing this? So this is a workflow that also works with CloudFormation that I wanted to share with everyone here. And that is, Jenna, from the console perspective, if you were to go make a VPC, let's do that. Let's go to the console and click on Create VPC. So just right up there. And this is the stuff that's going to ask us for. It's going to want us to know the name tag, the IPv4 CIDR block, the IPv6 CIDR block, and the default tenancy. Okay, cool. So we've got that. Now let's go over to those docs, the Terraform docs. And let's just go all the way back up to the top.
Here.
Let's just click on the AWS provider top link, if you wouldn't mind. Yeah, that one. I want you to pretend like this is the AWS console. If you wanted to make a VPC, we would go to the left. We would find the VPC thingamabobber link. We would click on it. We would say we want to make a VPC. So let's go down and look at the AWS VPC right there. And now we get to the question, well, there's the example, but first up, let's explore these docs. At the top, we're always going to have the examples of how to use them. And then we're going to have the argument reference on the right navigation bar. And the arguments are the stuff that you can pass to it. Excuse me, I've got a frog in my voice. And the attributes are things that it returns back to you that you can reference elsewhere in your code. So when I first landed on this page when working with Terraform, I'm like, holy crap, this is a lot of stuff. Where do I start? This is why we open up the console, right? We now know, hey, these are the fields when I created a VPC in the console that I should focus on. Well, hey, guess what? Those are the ones that we're going to focus on here in these docs. So if you'll click on that arguments, the arguments thing, right? The first thing we know that it wants is the CIDR block. And so we've set that, right? And what else on the console here do we have? Name tag. Why don't we go ahead and settle name tag since that's first there, right?
This here?
Oh, yeah. Don't up there at the top.
Oh, the name.
Field.
Yeah.
Yeah. That literally creates a tag called name tag.
Right.
Let's go back over to the Terraform docs. And let's look for a field called tags or an argument called tags, which is probably just right there at the bottom. Yeah. So why don't we go ahead and add that field, right? Because that's the first thing we would add in the console. So let's make that the first thing we add over in our Terraform code. Yep. So we're going to just add a, called tags. And this is actually going to be a map, right? So let's do name. So capital string name. It actually needs to be inside a string. Yeah, actually, I don't know if it needs to be inside a string, but I've always done it inside of a string. Okay. And I
did not do it in, these aren't, but like.
Oh, no. Yeah, I know for AWS specifically, I think for it to show up as name, it needs to be, it needs to be capitalized in name. And then we're going to do equal sign. And then let's open up a new string. And we're going to do some string interpolation here. We're going to do a $ and curly braces. Yeah. And we're going to do our var, so var dot our AWS default tags, or default tags, I think is what you called it. Yes. Yeah, there it is. Yeah. And then dot project. And then outside of those curly braces, let's add a hyphen and then just put VPC, right? And there's our some string interpolation. So that's pretty simple. And now we filled out that first field, right? That we would have filled out in the console. So if we head back over to the console, what else does it want here? It wants so we've got that. We've got this IPv6. So IPv6. Let's go ahead and optimistically do IPv6. What do you say? Does it sound good?
Sure.
So let's take a look at the docs here. So what would we call that here? It would be IPv6 CIDR block. Yep. Okay. So let's go. Actually, that wouldn't be it. I'm kidding. Let's go back to it. And here, this is where you'll get a little bit of mismatch. AWS lets you, I'm pretty sure this is still the case, right? You don't get to choose your IPv6 CIDR block, right?
I did not know that answer.
Okay. Why don't we go back to the console and see what it says? The AWS console is. Yes. So Amazon provided,
Yep. Yeah. That makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. So the equivalent of clicking that third option over here is, yes, there it is. So the equivalent of clicking that option over here is it should be at the top, the assign generated IPv6 CIDR block. It should be at the top of here.
I'm sorry, what? At the top, all the way at the top, or?
Well, I thought it would be somewhere around here. There should be something called assign auto-generated. Oh, there it is. Yeah, that's the argument. But where is that in the list here? You think that would be at the top, right?
Right.
Oh, there it is. Why is the A at the bottom? At the top. Okay, so we need that field.
Okay, I think I copied that.
Yeah.
And we'll go back here.
Yep. And just put that in wherever you'd like. And that's just a Boolean.
Just like this?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, that is it. And then let's head back over to the console. And I believe the next thing it wants to know about in the AWS console was tenancy, right? Instance tenancy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll leave network border group alone because I'm gonna be honest, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah. So if we want to do default, let's go back to the docs and find where instance tenancy is. Now that we know these aren't alphabetized, maybe oh, there we go, instant tenancy. Okay. Instance tenancy, yeah. So let's head back over to, instance, sweet, and that's there. and just string default. Actually needs to be a within string.
Dedicated. Oh, default.
Yeah. Here we go. Great. And so there is that. So that's what you would do if the workflow that I wanted to show there was that if you don't know where to begin, then just treat the Terraform docs like the AWS console, right? If you wanted to make a VPC, you would go to VPC, you would click on it, and then you would slowly fill in those different arguments. What arguments should you focus on? Well, the console, the AWS console gives you an idea of what those arguments should be. And obviously there's a lot more than that. There's a lot more things that you can do, and we'll do that here in just a second. But this is a very easy workflow. If you wanted to make an EC2 instance, you would go to the EC2 console, click create instance, fill out those parameters. Well, and same thing over here, you would go to the EC2 docs and fill out those arguments as well. Okay, so we've got that part of our VPC filled out. This is the workflow. That was a little bit long, but hey, again, we'll have bookmarks for people. And yes, the stream will be available after it's finished. So after that, we do have a couple of other fields that we need to add here. And they're not something that you see in the beginning of the console. That's enabling DNS support and DNS host names. Now, these are two extra fields. Would you tell us about those, Jenna, and why we'll wind up needing those?
I'm sorry, I missed that. What do we need?
DNS support and DNS host names. You know how in a VPC you can add those after you've created it?
I don't know the answer to that.
Oh, all good. Well, let's hop over to the VPC console, and we can just see it visually.
Yeah.
And just go. Let's cancel that. Let's not make this new one. Yeah. And instead, let's make sure we've got ours selected. And you see how there's DNS host names and where's the other one? Yeah, DNS host names, DNS resolution. Those options right there in the top first row, third and fourth.
Yes.
Yes, there we go. Yeah, those are the options that we want to add. And when we want to, the reason we're going to do that is so that things that we launch inside of the VPC can get a DNS name, right? That's really all we're doing it for. And to do that in here, you would.
So let me make sure I understand this. So if one of our resources is in a VPC and we want it to have a public DNS name, that's when we would use something like this.
Yeah, also a private DNS name.
Okay, well. Got it.
And someone correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah. So to get those fields on the console, we would have to have it selected and click on actions and put in the top right. And there they are. Edit DNS host names and DNS resolution. That's how we would do it here. But let's do it in Terraform. Yes. So those are both two fields here under the arguments. So we have somewhere you can just search for enable. Oh, there they are. Enable DNS support, enable DNS host names. And those are the two fields we need. They're both Booleans, and we would like them both to be true.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Nice. Well, why don't we apply it right there?
Okay.
Go ahead and just get that, because I'm curious to see if that winds up just needing our VPC to be destroyed or remade. By the way, Jenna, if you need a halftime breather, we will be able to edit this in post, and perhaps our audience at a time
right now.
Okay. Yeah.
Gonna update in place.
Nice. And there we
Adding
go.
our tag.
Yep. Perfect.
Yep. Okay. So yeah.
Nice. Okay, so with that done, now we've really sort of settled everything, right? The workflow is there, and a lot of what we're going to be doing is just in that VPC section of the documentation. So what's next? What are we going to make next here? This is kind of when building stuff in AWS and cloud infrastructure in general, I feel like we can get sort of a chicken egg problem, right? What do you build first? Well, you could build any of these things that we have listed here first. So how would you like to approach this? Would you like to just start at the top, go down?
I feel like the subnets should be first. I mean, that's my thought, but I guess I'm open to your thoughts as well here.
Yeah. So we can absolutely do subnets first. The interesting part is that when you create a VPC in the console, generally you make the VPC and then you go make the subnets, right? That's how I usually do it, right? However, the reason that we usually do that the reason I usually do that is because the VPC usually makes a route table and routes for us by default in the console, right?
Yeah.
But why don't we do that though? Let's do the natural thing and start with the subnet, right? So from the city analogy, we've made our range of postal codes. Now we're going to carve out the public postal codes, right? So in the console, we would go to subnets under VPC. So in the documentation, let's go to subnets, AWS subnet under the VPC side of the Terraform documentation. So we can just sort of see what this looks like. Yep. And here we go. We can see the example usage, right? And then, of course, we have our arguments that we need to pass it, which is also something that we can look at. So do you have any questions about this area here?
Nope, this makes sense.
Okay, cool. So let's head back over to our code. Then the first, let's go ahead and scaffold out that block there, right? The resource. Yeah, I think that, yeah, there we go. And then AWS underscore subnet. Yeah. And then let's name this one public, because this is what this is going to be. Right? This is going to be our public subnet. And the first thing we need to do is associate this with another resource, in this case, the VPC. And how do you do that? Well, first up, the field's called VPC ID. So let's find that argument in the documentation here. It's somewhere in there. There we go. The VPC. I don't know what I expected.
Bottom, but still not alphabetical. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So we obviously want to connect it to the VPC we've already made. Well, when you reference other resource blocks inside of Terraform, you always are going to start with the first block label, which in this case is AWS underscore VPC. So you can go ahead and type that.
Yeah. In a string?
No, not a string. And then dot, so our dot syntax. Oh, there we go. It's filling in, main. And then after that, it will be another dot and then whatever attribute that we want to do. And here we can see our VS Code plugin auto-completing, and we can already go ahead and guess that ID is it, right? So that's exactly what we need. But if we want to see that in the docs, if we go back over to the docs and under attribute references, oh, actually, this won't matter. Can you open the AWS VPC resource in another tab? It's right under the subnet. Yeah, just in another tab there. And go down to attributes reference. There we go. And we see ID. These are all the things that we can reference after that second dot, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of things. The ARN, instance tenancy, all sorts of stuff. But in this case, we just need the ID, right? So that'll be our first thing, which we have. Yeah. So the next, sorry, go ahead.
Nope, that's it. I just was agreeing.
Yeah. So the next thing is probably the CIDR block for the subnet, right? So that field is just going to be called CIDR block, just CIDR underscore block, which sometimes the autocomplete picks up, sometimes it does not. But that is it. If we go and look over at the docs for that real quick, just under the subnet one, yeah, it should just be CIDR block. So the IPv CIDR block for the subnet. Now we're gonna take a shortcut that's also gonna introduce us to some new concepts. We can, if you recall, if you make subnets in the console, which we can look at if you want, we don't have to. It makes you specify the subnet, the CIDR block that you create, right? But if we want to make this a little bit more reusable, let's go ahead and do something else. Let's introduce ourselves to functions. And I'm going to go ahead and post this in here into the chat. Also, I'm going to send it to you so that we can open that up, take a look at it. Yep. Here we go. And there's a lot of different functions that we can use inside of Terraform, right? So just like how CloudFormation has functions, so does Terraform. And one of these, if we click under IP network functions.
Okay.
There's one called CIDR Subnet, just the singular one. And what this does is, in essence, I don't want to, we can go into it, but it, in essence, what you do is you pass it a CIDR block and you pass it two other parameters, and it will carve out a smaller CIDR block for you, right? That way we can just pass it a CIDR block, change that around, and not have to go and redo these by hand. So does that sound good to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So let's head back over to our code then.
Should I copy this?
Yeah, sure. That'd be perfect. That's actually yeah. So we put that in. And so the prefix here, we name the parameter that, but what that takes is just going to be the CIDR block of our VPC, right? So we could reference the variable if we want, but we can also just reference the actual CIDR block from the VPC itself. So just how we got like the ID right there above us, we can also get the CIDR block here as well. So we could do AWS VPC, that one, .main, and then the CIDR block, CIDR_block should be, yep, there we go. So there's that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the next two arguments, the next one is going to say by how much to change our subnet mask, more or less. That's the by analogy thing here. And let's just set that to 4. So that's going to take us from a /20 subnet mask to a /24 subnet mask. So it's going to be smaller. And then the net num here is how many bits to change the actual subnet by, which let's just set that to 0 right now, which is just going to give us that first address in this smaller subnet. So that's what that's going to do. Okay. So we can pause there if because that's kind of a weird thing to do. It's because of the networking side of it, but did you have any questions on that?
I don't think so. I mean, this is definitely an area I'm not super familiar with. Like, I'm glad you're driving this part of it. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, let me recap and make sure I'm understanding. So by specifying the CIDR block, we're referencing the one in our VPC, and then we're making it smaller.
Yep. Yeah, we're carving out. We're getting from the city analogy. We're getting the smaller range of postal code codes that is going to be this subnet.
Just for the public subnet. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and to just show you exactly what this is going to make, just above CIDR block, will you just make a comment? Above the CIDR block argument right there. That's fine. And then so if we put out if we just do 10.255.0.0 /20, that's what we put in. What this is going to output, so just maybe make an arrow or something. Just this is mainly so people can see. This is going to make 10.255.0.0 /24, right? So that's all that's going to do. Yeah. So that's all it's going to do. And so now we need to do the same thing for IPv6, right? So there's an argument that looks exactly like this, except it's called IPv6_CIDR block. So we can add that here. And we can also go and look that up in the docs, but it's just going to say the IPv6 CIDR block. So we don't necessarily need to, but we're going to use this same function again, right? So let's just use the same function again. You can put it down there. But instead of referencing the VPC's main CIDR block, we need to reference the IPv6 CIDR block, which is right there. Yay, autocomplete. Yeah. But the difference here is instead of adding 4 to the subnet mask, we actually need to add 8. And ask me why. What's funny about this is like 3 years ago, I could have told you why, but now I can't remember exactly why and how IPv6 works. It's one of those things where every 6 months, if I don't refresh it, it kind of goes out. But this is going to, in essence, do the same thing. It's going to give us a smaller IPv6 range outside of the range that we've created. And if you're more interested in that, let me post the docs to the subnet function. There is a very low level I put it in the chat, a very low level look at how that works. Okay, so that sounds good. We also need 2 more things here, and that is to give things a public IP on launch and also create IPv6 on launch as well. So when we launch new resources into the public subnet, they will get an IPv4 address and they'll get an IPv6 address. So if we look back over at the docs here, there's for the AWS subnet. There are two that we're looking for, which are the map public IP on launch. Yep, so that's the first one. So we'll grab that one and set it to true. Let's just start with that one. And the reason we're doing that is so that when we launch our services in the public subnet, again, they have a public address so that they can be reached, right?
Okay.
And then we need to do the same thing for IPv6, which then that's correct right there. Oh,
sorry, what?
The true thing.
I did lose that.
Yeah. And then let's head back over to the docs again. And it should be called assign IPv6 address on creation, because we got very verbose on this one. There it is, right at the top. Yeah. Hey, what do you know? A is at the top this time. That's pretty funny. Come on, autocomplete.
No, it's gonna make me type the whole thing.
No. This is always the confusing part. Like, how do you get the copy? Sometimes it won't show up. It'll just say the copy link.
Address on creation.
Yep. On creation, set to true. And now we're almost there. We've got two more things. One of them is super simple. Let's go ahead and do it. It's the tags, right? So let's go ahead and do a tag. So tags equals, and which is going to be just like the VPC. We're going to make one called name and equal to, let's do that same string interpolation. So you can just copy that first part up there if you want. Yep. And then why don't we just call this public? And then let's leave it right there, because actually we now have one more field, because I would like to, I don't know about you, but I like having my subnets with the name of the availability zone that they're in. What do you think about that?
That makes sense.
Okay. So to do that, we have availability zone. We're going to have to do something different here. We could hard code the availability zone, but I want to introduce a new concept that we haven't looked at yet, and that's called data sources. We've looked at resources, and resources are how we tell AWS to make things. Data sources are how we ask it about things. So one of the things I want to ask it about is, hey, what are all the availability zones in the region I'm working in? That way we can deploy this in multiple. Does that sound good?
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah. Cool. So let's do this. Let's make a new file called data.tf. We'll just keep all of those in there. And again, this could be called anything, And let's cut over to the docs, back to the Terraform documentation. On the left side here, and under this VPC area, just if you would scroll up some, just to the top of the VPC sidebar here. Not that far. My bad.
I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, just right here. Just you see how there's resources, that nested resources thing. Will you close that tab? There it is. There's the data sources, and this is if we wanted to ask AWS about things, right?
Yeah.
Now every single service is going to have resources we can make, data sources that we can ask it about. But we want to ask about something. We want to ask something global. If you scroll all the way to the very bottom, there's something called data sources, just right there at the bottom, completely. Yeah, right there. That's so out of order. And this is how we can ask about, say, the availability zones, right? So that's pretty sweet. So let's click that. Yeah. And you're literally just going to copy and paste this into that file under the example usage. And this is how we grab those, right? So
I'm going to copy this.
Yep. So why don't we just copy that and drop that in. And yeah, I mean, we can just call it that, and that sounds good. This will give us the availability zones that are open. One thing I will ask you is, do you have wavelength zones enabled in your account?
I don't think so. I mean, I guess I don't know for sure, but
okay. Yeah, the only reason I asked,
if I have to explicitly enable it, I don't think I do.
Okay, yeah, I think you perfect, cool. Otherwise, since you can't launch, I think like internet gateways or something in that, it'll mess up because it tries to use those first. Anyhow, this is what we do. It's the same format as a resource, right? Except we say data block. What is the data source we're looking at? Well, it's availability zones. What do we want to call it? We're just going to call it available. And then we have our arguments saying, hey, we want the availability zones, which I guess unavailable availability zones wouldn't be available. Anyhow, let's go back to the VPC and see how we can use these.
Okay.
So back to the, yeah. So let's go ahead and do, let's use them in an actual field here, an actual argument first before we put it onto the tag. Let's add another argument here called availability zones, I believe. Availability zone. Yeah, there we go. And this is how we specify it. And we want to, what that data is going to return that we specified, it's going to return a list of all of the data of all the availability zones. So to reference a data source, you start with data. You've got that highlighted there, which is perfect. Oh, whoops. I made a whole block. Well, actually, there we go. It just autofilled it for us. Yeah. Excellent. So that's the full list. But what we want is we want the very first one of those, right? Well, actually, we don't even want that. We want, actually, yeah, that is it. My bad. Dot available. That is the label we called it. Oh, you know what? Let's do this. Go to the docs. This is easier. I'm just meandering here. Let's go to the docs. Remember, if we want to see what it can return to us, let's go to attributes to see what we can get back. And here we go. We want the names, right? So those are the names attribute there.
Okay.
Yep. So if we head back over and do .names, that is going to give us the names of that list, but now we want just one of them. So we're going to open up just 2 square brackets and just put 0. There we go. Okay. And that's going to give us that first one, right? So if we wanted to use this in the tag, we could do string interpolation and use that same little bit there at the end, if that makes sense. Yeah.
So just to make sure I understand.
Yeah.
I could do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Perfect. That's beautiful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want me to do that, or should I just undo that?
No. That looks great. That looks perfect. Yeah. Okay. Did we close the quote at the end? I think we did. Yeah. All righty. So that was our longer thing here, right? Because in this, we made the subnet by carving out a smaller subnet with the CIDR subnet function, right? And then we also saw how to work with data sources as well. So in this one block, we introduced a lot of new concepts. This is kind of the first big speed bump. It's really kind of like the last big speed bump to getting stuff done, because the rest of the resources we make aren't gonna, they'll either reuse these concepts or we'll go through. What are your thoughts so far, Jenna?
Yeah, I mean, I think this seems, I mean, other than VPCs are hard concepts, like it's straightforward on how the workflow works with like going back and forth with the documentation and finding the resource that I need and the attributes and the arguments. Arguments and attributes. Yep, I remember that right. So yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So we got the subnet. I would love to say let's apply and see it, but a subnet needs to belong to a route table, right? So that's actually what we need to make next. So why don't we go and check out what the route table resource looks like in the docs.
And
so it's under VPC.
It is under VPC, yep. Yeah. I wonder if I should have just searched, but too late now.
So route table right there. Yep. And there's some notes, but as usual, we have the example usage, arguments, and attributes. And this one's much smaller. There are ways to use nested blocks, but we're going to use it without nested blocks just to keep it simple. But let's go ahead and so what this is saying here is you have the VPC ID that you associate it with, and you have the routes on the route table. Now this is a little this is something that's in Terraform that can kind of confuse people. With this, we could specify another resource, which is a route directly in this one, or we can choose to make this separately. And if you look on the side navigation where there's AWS route table and how there's an AWS route above it, we could either make an individual AWS _routes or we could use those nested blocks. But just for separation of concerns, we're gonna leave it. We're gonna leave it just as without those nested blocks.
Okay.
That was a lot of words, but anyhow, we go back to just so let's go over here and let's scaffold out that resource. So resource, AWS route table.
Oh, I thought I like copied it, but I didn't.
Yeah, no. And then let's call this the public. Let's give this identifier public. And again, this is what we decide to call it. And then much like how we associated the subnet with our VPC, let's associate the route table with the VPC through that VPC ID. Yep. Oh.
There we go.
STPV, yeah. And yeah, we will have all the recordings up on YouTube after each episode with bookmarks and all sorts of goodies and links, all the links. It'll be great. All right, cool. And that's actually all we need for the route table. But let's go ahead and add a tag just like we've been doing to name it specifically. And the reason we're doing it like this is we don't have to do this, but I've always put this in there because this capital N name tag makes the console show the actual name when you show it. So that's why I generally like doing that.
Do we want to have the availability? Do we need to have the availability zone in this name?
No, I don't think so, because the route table's for any availability zones. So you can just call it public route table or whatever. Public Pokemon. No, okay. All right, so there's our route table. So that's good. What's missing? We have two more things missing. I think we have them in our grocery list. We need a route, right? So the actual route. Yep, so the actual route. And what is the route that we need? Well, here's a spoiler alert. Not really a spoiler. It's not a spoiler. There's nothing spoiled. When you make a route table, it's going to, by default, make a route for us that says, hey, anything within the subnet can talk to the subnet, right? So we don't have to worry about that one. But to make a public route, so what makes a subnet public is the fact that I can access an internet gateway. So we actually need to make a route to an internet gateway, which means we need two things here. So which would you like to make first?
It feels like we should make the internet gateway first if we have to have a route to the gateway.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
And I'd like to just one more time show the workflow. If you were gonna, let's go to the AWS console, if you wouldn't mind. Yep. If you're gonna make an internet gateway, you would come here to VPCs, you would find internet gateways on the side, and then you would click create internet gateway, and it would ask you for specific things, right? You can click cancel. I just wanted them to see that. Yep. Similarly, we go over to the Terraform docs. We find the VPC area of the docs, which we're in. We find internet gateway, and we know exactly what it is that we need to make. In fact, you can literally just copy what's right there because that's exactly what we need.
Okay.
Yep. And yeah, we actually called the VPC main, so that works too. Yeah, we should probably change the actual name tag though. Yeah. And then just call that whatever it is that you would like. Perfect. So that is our internet gateway. So we've got that. So now we need to make a route that points to it. So let's go ahead and find that route resource in the docs. And does the order of resources matter? They do, but they don't. They do in the sense that they absolutely do matter, but they don't because Terraform takes care of that dependency graph for you and figures those things out. Now, if you want to override that and make sure things go in a specific order, we will actually see how to do that here in a little bit. But for this route, what does it need? Well, if you would like to, we can use the console to see what the required ones are, or we can just, I mean, this is pretty much what we need right here, right? We're going to need the route table ID that it belongs to. We're going to need the CIDR block it goes to. And then in our case, you always need something to point it to, right? And for in our cases, we're going to point it to that gateway. There might even be an example in the example usage of how to do that.
And that's, you mean here in the depends on, that's what's pointing?
That's actually not. That's what would, Mr. Colonel here asked, does order of resources matter? The depends on is something that we can use to force order, but we'll do that later.
Okay.
So, but if we look down, maybe in the example usage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, go on.
Oh, yeah. Just okay, no, there is no example for this. That's fine. So let's click the argument reference so we know all the possible things that we can pass it, right? And let's go to the console here to see what AWS generally wants us to put into it. And just go to routes or route table, and then just click on the default route table, which is the non-Rs one. Yeah, let's just click on that one. And then for routes here, we usually want the destination it's going to and the target. So this kind of gives us an idea of the concepts we're looking for, right?
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and head back over to our Terraform code. And we'll make that AWS route here. Yep, perfect. So AWS routes. And we can call it whatever. I usually probably just call it public internet access, just so it knows, because that's what we're doing. I think let's do underscores just for consistency, if you wouldn't mind.
Oh yeah.
Just because when you reference that name later, a hyphen will break it. So yeah. And then we need to associate it with a VPC. So wait, no, I'm kidding. I lied. You don't.
Oh.
Just completely, yeah. We actually need to associate it with a route table, right? A route gets associated with the route table. So
which we have.
Yeah, which we have. And so hopefully that pattern makes sense. So the way we do it, route table ID, yep. And then we always have the name of the resource or the type of resource, which is, the route table. Yep, that's it. And then remember that after that, we have the attribute we want to reference. And in this case, there is an attribute you can reference, just call it ID. And that will do it. Yeah, perfect. So the next thing is the destination CIDR block. Where is this route taking stuff to? Well, we want to set it to in string 0.0.0.0/0. So just outwards to the world. And then the final argument we should probably go to the docs and look at, just so we can see it. And it's under the argument reference, it's called gateway ID, and it's the identifier of the VPC gateway, right?
Okay.
And this is how we can tell it about that internet gateway. Yep, .id.
Remember
that is it. Yeah, there we go. And I believe that, I'm just checking here on my notes. Oh, I think we've come to the first completion, right? Let's scroll up here, see what we've got. We made the VPC. From the VPC, we made the route table, and then the route and but there is one more thing. When we're making a route table, even though we've made the route table and we've made the subnet, there's one simple thing left to do, and that is to associate the subnet with the route table. So this is kind of the thing when working with both CloudFormation and Terraform that you'll notice that you're doing. What you make in the console, a lot of other things get made in the background. And in this case, this is one of those things, associating that route. So we need to head back over to the Terraform docs and find a resource called route table association. And it's actually right there. Yeah. And it's super simple. You can just copy that and use it as a template, right? We just need to get the ID of our public subnet and associate it with the ID of our route table. Yep. And we can call that, call that maybe public, since that's, yeah. And then our subnet was called public. Yep. And then route table was called, what was it called? Public. Yeah, there we go. Sweet.
Oops, something happened there.
Yep. And we also need the .id thing on both. Okay. So that does it. Now we should be able to run Terraform apply and see this all come to life.
Okay.
Oh, I know, right? This is the moment where you're like, okay, I've just written a lot of code. Is any of this going to work? Let's see if it yells at us. Oh, not yelling yet. This is good. Okay, look
Okay.
at this. So a lot of stuff is going to get created here. Oh, well, yeah. So the gateway, the routes, the route table, and the association. Yeah, that all looks good. And then the subnet, of course. And we can see all the stuff it's going to make. Yeah.
I mean, we created these in a different order. We typed them out in like they're organized in our file in a different order, but it looks like it's presented here in the plan in the order that it needs to be created, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah. And there is actually a function or a command we can use later. I think it's the graph command that'll show all the relationships. So,
Okay.
but for now, this looks good.
Okay.
Let's see this go. Oh, okay. So there's a lot of heavy lifting there. Geez, how you holding up on that end?
I'm good. That is a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot.
But it's all coming together. Both on the VPC side, but also and the things that you need for it, but also the different ways of working with Terraform and or the workflow and looking through the docs and using the variables and the code completion is top notch.
Yeah, it is really nice because like
sometimes
I can sit. Go ahead.
I was gonna say sometimes I feel like I install VS Code extensions for auto completion type of things, and sometimes they are totally in the way. But this one does not feel in the way for me, so like that's really nice.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. You're like you just start typing, and then I swear sometimes it gets like hung up on thinking like one of them's your favorite, and it just always starts popping it up. Yeah. All right, why don't we go take a look at what's been created in the console?
Okay. Should we start at the VPC level or
yeah, sure. Why not? Why
okay.
not? Oh, there we go. We see our name has been added. That's wonderful. We've got all the settings we wanted. Yep.
Is this the route table that we created?
That is, let's check. I think that's actually one of two. I think that's the main one that gets created by default when you make it. But if we clear those filters, we should be able to see the one that we made. Yes, there's the one that we made.
Okay.
Yep, which is cool. And inside of that, we should see our routes. Yep, there's the one to our internet gateway. And then if we go to subnet associations, we can see that our public subnet has been associated with it.
Okay.
Yeah. So Jackie's got a question. What's been the most interesting thing that you've learned so far today?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, I was just talking about the autocomplete extension. Like that's super slick. But also I feel like I'm solidifying some of my knowledge of VPCs. I'm trying to think of if I've ever built one from scratch. A lot of times that, I'm either like clicking through the console and maybe not always getting it right. Or I'm copying someone else's code and I know like we do that a lot in our work, right? Like we find a good example and we copy it or we reuse it multiple times. And for me, this is like a great way for me to learn and reinforce what maybe I've done before a little bit, but so yeah.
Cool.
How about for you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is like I always like revisiting the fundamentals because, obviously in the background, you and I put in a lot of work into preparing for this and just going through it again and understanding, oh, wow, like, hey, I forgot how CIDR blocks and subnet masking works. Like all of those things, like reading through those, it's just like you get through some of these really deep terse articles, you're like, I don't think I know anything. So, yeah. Okay.
So Keep Alive, their response to this question is data sources. And I agree. That was something I didn't I think maybe I had used it before in some of my initial Terraform usage, but that was again, it just reinforced that as a way to, as a concept here. So I agree with that one as well.
Yeah. Okay, so the news, we won't say bad news. There's no such thing as bad news in this stream, right? Is that we still need to make another public subnet, and we still need to make all of our private subnets. But the good news is we have learned everything we need to get through and make those minus 2 more things, but they are going to speed stuff up a ton. So would you like to do a quick halftime, Jenna, or are you good to keep going? What do you think?
Good to keep going.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so we've got one public subnet. I know in my architecture diagram we have one public subnet, but that would be bad, right? We don't want just one. We probably want more than one. So let's hop back over to our code real quick and take a look at that. The subnet aspect of your code. Yes. So there's the public subnet, and then we also have the subnet association. Those are the 2 things that we need. So the one way that we could do this is we could duplicate this resource, and we could duplicate the route table association resource. But then when we want another public subnet, we would have to do that again and again and again. And that would be pretty bad. Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't be bad. It'd be very verbose, but we probably don't want that. Yeah. Well, there exists an argument, and these are they're called meta arguments. That, you know how this subnet has specific arguments to it. Well, resources in general have a set of meta arguments that work on any of them, and I'm going to give you the link to one of them. Thing. Here we go. I'm going to just put it right in the chat here. Is the count meta argument, and what, if you wouldn't mind opening that up in the browser. The count meta argument is going to make a count that you specify of those things. So if you scroll down to the basic syntax, we see an example of it being used with an instance. So in this case, it's going to make 4 instances. So that's pretty cool, right?
Okay.
And yeah, when you specify count immediately within that block, it's going to give you access to another value on count.index that you can use to then change the different values. So this right here is the equivalent of copy and pasting that block 3 more times and just changing that count.index to things. So that's what we're going to do with the public subnet. Does it sound good?
Yep.
Sweet. So let's head back over. And for this, at the top here, let's just put, usually I like to put the count argument at the top. So if someone's scanning through the code, they can see, okay, this is making multiple. So let's do count. And let's go ahead and be dry and set this to a variable that we'll then go and create. Let's just call this something like public subnet count, VPC public subnet count, whatever you'd like. Yep. And then let's go make that a variable. Yep. And this will be a number. Sweet. What theme are you using, by the way? This is very clean.
I was wondering if someone was going to ask me that. Partly I was wondering because I wonder if this is like easy to read on screen or not. It is for other people. So yeah. Let me. I think it's like. I know that shortcut. I should know. It's night owl.
Oh, okay. Night owl. Okay. Nice. Yeah. All right. Well, I like that. And so let's go ahead and set a default value, and let's just keep it to 2 for now. Yep. Okay. Great. And so let's head back over to our thing here. And so there's a couple things that we need to change around. The first one here is going to be the CIDR block, right? Because let's go ahead and just set that final 0 value. So in the CIDR block argument to count.index. So the first time it's going to just increment the the bits on the subnet by 0, which is what we have by default. But then the next time it's going to do it by 1, which is going to give us a different subnet block. I wish I could tell you what that's going to be off the top of my head, but I don't. But we'll see it in the console after we apply it. So that's how we'll use count index there. We need to do the same thing for the IPv6 CIDR block.
Did I type something wrong? I got a little red squiggly here.
Oh, yeah. You don't need the string interpolation there. You just need
I don't?
count on it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, kind of like bar dot. Okay.
Yeah. And then here we do the same thing.
Okay.
Yep. And then we actually need to do this in 2 more places here. And that's going to be, on the availability zones, and then also on the name tag. And that's what's another cool thing. What we're doing is we're saying, hey, put this first one in the first availability zone in this list of names, and put the second one in the next availability zone. So now we get that spread over the AZ here by just using the count.
Okay.
So that's pretty cool, right? Yeah. So that is how we are going to duplicate the subnets. Now we have one more thing we need to do that to, and those are the route table associations, right? Where we associated the subnets. And this is where we're going to learn something else new as well. So this one's a little bit more tricky because, right, like how do we get this in here? Well, we know we're going to need count, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we go ahead and add count to the top of this thing? And we just this is probably going to always be the same as the number of public subnets we make. So that's easy there. But for subnet ID, this one's a little bit tricky. How do we get the ID of each thing, right? Well, there is something called the splat operator. So after the public dot, if you put an asterisk, and then another dot, when you type it like that, what it's going to do is it's going to know for our resource, AWS subnet. Yes, Josie, thank you. For that subnet, or for that resource, it knows it's going to need to return all of them, right? And so in this specific case, what it's saying, hey, get all of those resources and give me the IDs back in a list, right?
Okay.
So that's cool, except this isn't going to work just yet because this one's a singular ID, right? So the way that we make this happen is with another function here. Let me grab it. It is called the element function. Post it in the chat as well here. And if you want to just take a look at that, it's very simple. It's going to just grab a single element from a list. So nothing. Are there enough AZs? What if the index runs out? That's a very good question. And admittedly, Apple-headed, I have not accounted for that. So if you were to go and make like 10 public subnets, it will run out because I don't think there's 10 in US East 1. But good catch. Very good catch. So this is the exact function we need to use. So if we head back, and we're going to wrap that list with that function. So that is going to be the list parameter of that function. So just element. Yeah, that whole little split. Yeah, so that is the list parameter. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, I bet this is going to be the count or the index.
Yep, you got it.
Okay.
Yeah. And there we go. So what this is the equivalent of doing right here is this would be the equivalent of copy and pasting this twice, and then grabbing the ID of the first public subnet, grabbing the ID of the second one, right? And that's it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. Now we can actually do a plan and apply, or just an apply. And this will go and make that extra one. See, like I said, that part took us like 10 minutes because we got all the hard stuff out of the way, right?
Yeah.
Yep. And so here we'll see we've got another subnet being made. I think it's going to have to remake the other one. Oh, no, it just moved it. Nice. Yep. So it's just moving it because we did that.
What do you mean by move?
Sorry, it's moved, like I think they call it moved just like MV, right? It's just renaming it.
Yeah. It just says moved here.
Yeah.
Got it.
And okay. Cat 75RO, I think you can. I think I'm just stuck in my old ways, to be honest. So Yeah. And it's on using list square brackets count on index. But yes, let's go ahead and do that. Perfect. And then we can take a look at that in the console. And then we're like home free. We're so close, right? Because now like everything is practically done. We just got to finish up the private side of things.
Oh, 1 minute.
Yeah. Got to re-authenticate.
I forgot. I have like there's a default logout time here, so I forgot to change that. Before starting, I will do that before next time.
Yeah, all good.
Okay, so back to our VPC list here. I think that finished, right?
Yeah. Yep. So we can take a look at it. If we just go to subnets. Here we go. There's our second. And there we can see how much it incremented by. So it incremented the third dot by 1 in the IPv4 CIDR. Yeah. So there we go. Like I considered act like I knew that was going to happen. I did because I've tried it, but why that happens is, and we have it in different availability zones. So we've got that all set. And hey, we didn't repeat ourselves. And now if we want 4 subnets, we could just put 4 and we would not have to do anything and it would spread them across the AZs. So
yeah.
Nice. Okay. So this brings us to the final part of our grocery list. And that is making the private route table, route associations, subnets, and NAT gateways. But we've established every single thing that we're going to do.
Yeah.
So how would you like to begin here?
I mean, we could just start at the top again. Let's just update our grocery list. We've done this one.
Yep.
For this next chunk of work, do we also need the internet gate? We don't need the internet gateway for this one, right?
Right. We don't need it.
Okay. And we've done that.
Yep.
And we need this.
Yep. This is it. We will need one more thing that's not listed on here, and that's going to be an EIP for the NAT gateway. But I mean, that you'll see that's just like 2 lines. So,
okay.
So why don't we go ahead and create the last time we started with the subnet. Would you like to begin with the subnet again?
I feel like it ended up being a little backwards, but I think it was fine. So.
Yeah, I mean it's the console workflow, but if you'd like to, we could start with the route table this time.
No, let's just do the same thing.
Okay, so let's start with a subnet. So just copy and paste the whole thing.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Should I add put this at the bottom? So you have all the private stuff kind of at the bottom.
Yeah, and after this, we can take a pass and put some comments in. So yeah, private. And we know, hey, variable, we should probably make a new one, right? So why don't we make one for the private? Yeah, so let's go make that variable first.
I like to copy and paste.
Yeah, you know what? Everyone does. We just don't all admit it. Yep.
I assume we also need to here, or want to here. Okay.
Yeah. And then we still want the VPC ID to be there. Now, the trick here is with this CIDR block. Right now, if we leave this as is, it's going to try and use the exact same CIDR blocks that we have set for the public ones.
Right.
But we don't want to do that. So it's a very simple hack we can do here is just do some addition. So just right after count index, do a space and then a plus sign. Yep, and then space. And let's just add the private subnet count, the var.private subnet count. Yep, and that will take care of that.
Okay.
And we don't need the next 3 fields at all because we're in a private subnet, so we're not going to have IPv6 mapping private or mapping public IPs to our resources in there. So that goes away. And then we need to make that tag probably point to private. And hey, guess what? We just made the subnet and we're done.
Okay.
So much faster, right?
Yeah, that was fast.
Yeah. So we've made the subnet. What's next is we should probably go ahead and make the route table, right?
Okay.
So for speed, we can just copy and paste again. And it's like, if we're being realistic, if you're doing real development, this is how you would do it. You wouldn't type this out again, right? You would just do this.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we just need to rename those fields here. Yep. That looks good. Yep. And then last time we said, well, do we want to make the routes first or the internet gateway? And we opted towards the internet gateways. But we don't need that this time. This time we need the NAT gateway. Right?
Okay.
Yeah. But for a NAT gateway to exist, it actually needs an EIP, so an elastic IP address first. So let's go ahead and make the EIP first. So if you went to the console, to the AWS console, sorry, you would just click on elastic IPs. To answer Pete at home, that's a very good point, Pete, and we probably should do that. Yeah, we can change that back. Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do that real quick. He makes a good point because we would want to increment it up by the number of public subnets there instead of private subnets. So for that var subnet count at the end of that one, just changing that to public.
Can you repeat his question so that everyone
knows? He asks for line 58 here. Shouldn't we make that set to the public count instead of the private count? And yes, we should, because if otherwise, I see where he's going, but words. If we were to have made public subnet count 3, for example, and private subnet count 1, they would still overlap if we used private here. But by changing this to public, we make sure that we never overlap with the public. So very good catch, Pete, at home. I hope you're doing well at home, Pete.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So back over to the AWS console. The EIPs, we would just do that, and that's all there is. But we don't really need to deal with any of this stuff. But this is just me driving home the workflow. So similarly, we would go to the Terraform docs. We would, under VPC, find EIP, which, we can use fuzzy search here.
Oh, that did not help.
Oh, wait, actually, it is under, I think it is just under EC2. This is always the confusing thing, how like you can access security groups both under the VPC console and the EC2 one. So it's kind of the same thing.
Yep.
So this is it. You can just copy paste that little bit there, and we can begin from there. Yep.
Okay, so
just drop it there. We don't want that set to an instance though, so we'll just get rid of that.
Right.
Yeah,
the
we don't need that field.
Yeah, just get rid of that whole thing. And for the name, for our tag, we probably don't want to call that LB. Just call it NAT, since that's what we're going to be attaching it to.
Okay.
And then the last thing would just be a name tag. So just kind of like how we have that tag for the, yeah. Works as well, and whatever you would like to call that, NAT EIP, or we could do the developer cliche, call it your EIP. But okay, so that brings us then to the NAT gateway resource. So why don't we go take a look at that in the documentation? And this is where we're going to introduce one more final new thing. So just this is NAT_gateway. There we go. It's under VPC. Yep. And this is all we need right here. This is the perfect template. The allocation ID being what EIP we're going to give it. The subnet ID being which one are we going to launch it into. And then, of course, tags. And then we'll touch on that last thing there in a second. So if we drop that in, we know that our EIP was named NAT. Oh, yeah. Good. I like that. Let's call that NAT. And then this is NAT. Yep. The subnet ID is, well, where do we launch this subnet, the NAT gateway into? Well, we actually need to launch it into the public one, right? It needs to be in the public one so it can access the internet gateway. So it's how it uses there. But here's the problem with this right here is that we have our AWS.public.id, right, is actually a list, right? So how do we do that? Well, we saw the splat thing. Instead of splat, we can actually put a 0 through in instead to grab a specific one. So let's just set this to public.0.id. .id, and that'll just put it in that first one. Yep, just like that. And then for the tags, just let's follow our same convention here. And then I'm going to give us another link here. Where are you, link? Show yourself.
Yeah. For those wondering, we will have the final code. We'll be building this out, pushing this up to the GitHub repository after we're done here. And that way, as we're building along here, you'll be able to follow along at home. And each time we meet and go through a new section of stuff, that'll be added to it.
Yeah. All right. So I just posted another link if you wouldn't mind opening up. And we had a question earlier about how does it around resource order, right? And so by default, Terraform builds a dependency graph, and it's really good about figuring out what things should go in order. And Jenna, you pointed that out when we did the plan. But if at times you want to really say, but do it this way, well, here is where depends on comes into play. Like count, anything that's a resource, we can add this to. And what we're going to do here is this NAT gateway, well, it needs to depend on two things, that EIP is up, and also that the internet gateway is up, because without those two things, it's not going to be able to point to anything. So the way you use it is, let's go ahead and go back over to, we can look at the example here, but I can just show it to you as well. Yeah.
Or am I going back? Or just scroll down?
Our code. This example is very long. I think our example probably shows things a little bit better. So in that depends on thing, we know we want it. Let's go ahead and clear the square brackets there under depends on line 89. Yeah, so let's just get rid of that. And we'll open up the square brackets again. And if we want this to depend upon our EIP, we're going to just reference this like any other resource here. So AWS EIP, and then our tag that we gave it, .nat. And that's it. We don't need a specific attribute because we're referencing the entire resource. So let's go ahead, and I'm pretty sure a comma is required, but we actually need another one. So just a comma, and then we need to make it dependent upon on the internet gateway as well. So yep, there you go. And then I don't remember what we called that.
I don't either.
Yeah.
Probably internet gateway. GW.
Aha. Yes.
Okay.
And that is all we do. So now what that will do is it will make sure that it will not make this NAT until those two resources are made, which is how you enforce order if you want. So NAT gateway isn't highly available is a question. So would you need one in each AZ? Maybe not needed in this event, but is worth mentioning. I'm pretty sure that NAT gateways from that you create the AWS aren't they, Jenna? I believe that they are, right?
I don't know that answer.
Yeah, if it was we were just creating a singular NAT instance, I don't think it would be. I see what you're saying, deploying it only into one, but I'm not sure if I actually don't have the answer to that question. LinkedIn user, for some reason, it's not showing your name. Yeah, if anyone else has that information, that is a good question, but I think it is. Okay. So we've got our NAT gateway there. What else do we need? We made the EIP as well. So now all that's left to do is to make the route table and the routes, right? But actually, did we make the route table already?
We did make the route table.
Okay. So now we just need to make the route. And this is going to look exactly like the public internet access one. Exactly. Except instead of, and we just need to change the values to it. Yep. And then
what would we call this one? Private something? Private routes?
I just call it private internet access because that's what it's yeah. Yep. And then we need to do the private route table. And then we need to point this. So this argument actually needs to change. So gateway ID is specifically for internet gateways. So let's go back over to the docs for an AWS route. And Shashi K, the pub, we changed it. But for the NAT gateway, it needs to be with the internet gateway so that it can reach out. The private things will reach out to the NAT gateway, but the NAT gateway needs to be able to access the internet gateway to even get out to the internet, if that makes sense. So it's probably going to be quicker. Okay, yeah, there we go. Fuzzy search, blessing and a curse, right?
Yep.
So under argument reference, there should be one called NAT gateway ID.
Okay.
Yep, there we go. And we're just going to use that instead. Oh, there we go. And then we just want to point it to our NAT gateway. Yep. And that's that. And that means the last thing we need to do, I think, unless I'm missing something, is do the route table association.
Okay.
Which we can just copy and paste the public one because it's going to look the exact same. Yep. And then just private subnet counts.
Okay.
And then, yep, just change that to private. And then change the route table ID. And I think that is it. Yeah. I believe the moment of truth has arrived to apply what we have created here. Well, what you have created with your magical fingertips.
Okay, so here we go. The moment of truth. Did I make a typo?
And if you did, it'll only yell at us a little bit. But you didn't. Look at that.
It looks pretty good.
Yeah.
So far, at least.
Everything has been what it intends to do. So nice. All right. So we can do a yes. I liked the flare. That was good.
Yes. I'm gonna do it.
And now it will go and create it. So what do you think?
I think I'm ready to see this.
Yeah, yeah. How does coding for 2.5 hours feel?
I mean, it's more than I've done in a little while, so it feels good actually.
Yeah. Oh, okay, good.
I also personally I enjoy learning this way by kind of going the back and forth. So this is good, yeah.
Yeah, nice. And Cat75, RO, you read my mind. We're gonna see some of those cool things here shortly. Cool. Yeah. Oh, I just lost my. There we go. Let me see here.
Okay.
Right.
While we're waiting for this, I'm gonna share this survey again.
Yes.
If you have feedback for us, whether it's about this show, it's about the topics that we're covering, product or service feedback for either of us to take back to our teams, please take the survey. Let us know what you think. Your feedback is always welcome. I'll leave this up for another minute or moment or two. I will say that I did add some credit codes, but we have a lot of survey responses, so we don't have any more credit codes left. But that means that you can join us on our next show when we go beyond the VPC, and I will have some more credit codes for you.
Ooh.
Should we, while we're taking this little break, should we talk about what's next?
Yeah. What is next, Jenna?
Well, I mean, I think we kind of need to define it. But I think like the next piece is probably getting the containers up and running.
Yeah, that's
with our fake services.
Yeah. And that's something I'd like to see is like, how much do people want us to go into
Yeah.
the concepts of containers and Docker and the like versus just say, okay, let's assume you know it and move on,
Yep.
But that would make sense because you would, as a developer, have gone and created your application and be saying, okay, how do I get this up now, right? And that's where ECS comes into the conversation. So that'll probably be the focus next time, or at least the beginning focus.
I think so.
Though we'll probably make the episode a little smaller next time, though,
Yeah,
right?
I think some good feedback for us is to figure out how we break this up into digestible chunks. I know that not everybody can sit here for 2 or 3 hours, so we want to make sure that it's the right length for you too. So that's also very good feedback for us.
Yes.
Do we want to say when we're meeting next?
I believe not next week, but the week after, correct?
Yeah. So same time, 2 weeks from today.
Mm-hmm.
That would put us at, what date is that going to be? I don't have my calendar open, so I can't look, but 2 weeks from today, 10 a.m. Pacific, noon Central Time, which is where I am.
24th.
The 24th.
Yes.
Of February. Okay.
Yeah. I like Emmanuel's comment. Keep it as long as it needs. What we'll do is, because I suppose if you're viewing this later on, you'll have the benefit of that. We'll have chapter markers and bookmarks in the video. So you'll be able to like scrub to the different spots. So that'll be good. I think this may be more for us because 2.5 hours in front of this ring light, I'm surprised I don't have like an artificial tan. Like
at that point, I think it would be a real tan, but
yeah. Just I get this ring just like right there. And yes, code will be available, Zaid. NAT gateway always takes a little bit time to create. Let's see what else. I guess we could sort of recap the code real quick while we wait. Do you want to walk through?
Let me get our file explorer open. So how would I walk through this? Because you've been doing a lot of talking.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, so we started with initializing our Terraform project with Terraform init at the command line. That created a few things for us, and maybe didn't create anything for us, but it pulled down the modules. Is that correct? I think we created our main TF file, and then we did the Terraform init, which pulled down the provider, the AWS provider that we needed.
Yep.
And then we went through, we initially had a very basic VPC in the same main file, but we wanted to extract that to its own file, which is this one, the vpc.tf. So all of our VPC code is in there now. Another step that we took was introducing the concept of variables. And so that for that, we created the variables file. So we've got a handful of variables in here. We learned how to set a default. We learned how to specify it at the command line, or to override it at the command. Did we talk about overriding it at the command line without, if is a default, but we don't want to override it?
We haven't yet with the different variable files, but we can touch on that in the next one.
Okay.
Just because there's a number of ways.
Yeah. And then, we talked about the variables. Then we went and started digging pretty deep into the VPC, and we covered, again, pulling in more variables. We covered how to use, I think these are called functions. Is that correct?
Yep, that is right.
Subnet is a function. We covered, I forgot to mention, we covered the default tags as part of the variables. and that was in here. So
Mm-hmm.
by using this default tags on the provider, we can say that all of our resources created using this provider get these tags.
Yep.
Back to the VPC. We also, what else? We use the element function. We, then we, at some point, I think that's we started introducing this count, the idea of a count. So
Yeah,
this is where, yeah, we wanted to create more than just one subnet. We wanted to create two of them in different availability zones. And so we created a variable for the number of subnets that we wanted to create. We set the count attribute argument to that variable. Just had to say it out loud once. And then we passed that count index into a few things to do some different offsetting and indexing.
Yep.
And continued. Once we had our public subnet, route table, internet gateway all set up, we were able to basically just copy and paste and do kind of the same exact thing for the private side of it with a few additions. So one of those additions was for the, let me get rid of this, for the CIDR block for the private subnet, we needed to offset it by the public subnet number of public subnets that we have.
Yeah. And we do have a comment about that. The reason being is, so when we created the public subnets, if Jenna, could you highlight that IP CIDR block right above it, the 24 subnet mask one? Yeah. So what we did with the public ones is we created, when we set it to the count index up above, what happened is it created 10.255.1, well, .0.0/24. Then it made 10.255.1.0/24, right? So when we came down here, had we not added the public subnet account, what would have happened is it would have tried to overwrite, it would have tried to make those again. So we didn't want that. The reason we set it to public subnet account, or it's not accounts, public subnet count, is because let's say that the subnet count, the public subnet count is 2, right? And we change the private subnet count here to just 1. Well, what would happen is on this first pass, we would get the count index and it would be 0. And then we would get the private subnet count, which would be 1. And that would equal 1. And it would wind up overlapping with the second public subnet. So the reason we use the public subnet count is so that that overlap doesn't happen. So yeah. And this is kind of a good thing for those of you, following along. You can always tinker with those, right? You can always just plug those numbers in since those are variables and apply it and see what happens. And it'll just show you right there and then apply output.
Oh, another thing we learned about is the depends on, and this is, we know that this NAT gateway depends on the Elastic IP and the internet gateway.
Yep.
Yeah, and so again, like Terraform does really well with its own dependency graph, but this is kind of just forcing it. Is that the case? Forcing the dependency?
Yep, that is it.
So it gets created in the right order. Okay, I'm going to go and see. Oh, we're still waiting. Nope, we're not.
Oh,
we're good.
There we go. Let's go check it out. So in our subnets, there we go. There's the other one. There's the 4 subnets. Nice.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess we could look at like the NAT gateway, I guess, or the route tables. We can just sort of look through everything we made.
Yeah.
So there's the NAT. There's the Elastic IP it's bound to. Nice.
That one.
Nice. And that's bound to our route table we made somewhere. I guess it doesn't show it there. but it would be under route tables, and there's our private one. One of them's the private one. There we go. Yep. And then we can see our routes, sweet. And then there's also the subnet associations that show those are those resources we made to associate them.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. This is one of those things where it's like, well, it took us hours to write, but like 2 minutes to show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
All
Well,
right.
there it is.
There it is.
There it is. There are 2 quick convenience things I wanted to show you before we wrap up, and they will take but like a minute.
Okay.
And if we just head back over to the command line here, what if we want to make this look a little bit prettier? Well, we can type Terraform space FMT for format, and then just do it.
Because
and then go
format is too long to type.
Yeah, exactly. And now look at how pretty it all is.
Oh, we should have done a git commit to see what the differences were.
Oh, we should have. We totally should have. But if you scroll up, you'll see all the equal signs have been like set to be all readable and stuff.
I don't even know what changed. So
so like just maybe can you press Command Z? Maybe in there it'll do it. Yes, there you go. So that's what it did.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
lined everything up so that it's a little bit more readable. Yeah. So that's pretty cool. And it does that for all of those. Just it makes it a little bit more scannable, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that's one quick convenience thing, just so you can look through it really quickly. One more thing is if you go over to the command line and type Terraform graph. Yep. This will generate an image for you somewhere. I forget where it puts it, but it's made an image for you somewhere. Let me see exactly where that creates that. Oh, wait. We can, I think we have to, oh yeah, that's right. We have to, let me send you the link. You can turn this into a PNG if you go here, this link. And at the bottom, there is a generating images section of it that you can just copy and paste.
So that's if I have dot. I don't have dot.
Ah, okay. Well, you can just look at the example. We don't need to necessarily do that right now. But if you look at the example, what it will do if you have that in is it will generate a nice PNG here with all the relationships between your resources.
Cool.
Yeah. Oh.
All right.
And so we end the first part of our long journey, right?
Yes.
Well,
here
we are, Jenna.
Yeah, I mean, this was a nice, good chunk to start with, and I know it was a little bit long, but we got through it. And so I think we'll be in a good spot for the next time. I'm again going to plug the survey. Your feedback is very useful to us. Whether it's about the code that we're writing, the technology that we're using, products or service feedback, we want to make sure that your voice is heard, and we can pass that along to product teams. What we're talking about on the show, the length of it, all of that kind of fun stuff. If we need more of Josie to come around and say hi, I bet we could figure that out too.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Jenna, for helping and putting in the time you put into this. And thanks for everyone who followed along.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you all for being here. We've said it before, but there will be a recording of this. You're going to publish that to the HashiCorp YouTube channel, I assume.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what your timeline is on that, so I'll let you mention that or not.
Should be next week.
Okay.
The latest.
Okay, excellent. And then we can, we'll start collecting these resources and put them in kind of an aggregated place so that we can
Yeah.
give them to you. Maybe we'll actually do that ahead of time next time.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Awesome.
cool.
All right. Well, cheers, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us.
You know what though?
What?
Should we destroy it?
Oh, that's a great idea.
Crap, we just said goodbye before destroying it. Just
No, I hope
kidding.
you haven't
We have
left yet.
one more thing. This is
I hope
easy
you
though.
left
Just
yet.
go to the shell and type Terraform destroy. I can't believe I forgot about this. And
No,
this is going to destroy all the things.
Yeah, this is a really good step. I mean, we've got it all in code, so we don't need it to sit running for the next 2 weeks while
Yeah.
we wait.
Yeah.
So this is exactly what we should be doing. So good
Yeah.
call.
Yep. And this shows everything it's getting rid of.
Yep.
And so all of our hard work being thrown away.
Well, I mean, it's the output of our hard work, not the
Yes,
actual
yes.
hard work, because we're gonna put all of our code into GitHub and share that with
Yep.
you as well.
Absolutely. And so this goes through and it destroys it. And this can probably take up to like, like thanks for joining us all today. Destroy and end.
Yes, tear it down, tear it apart.
Yeah.
Thank you all for laughing with us.
Yeah.
One thing while we're waiting for this and about to say goodbye again, I will mention is in our you can see our Twitter handles there right here.
Yep.
And right there.
Yeah.
And we'll share a bunch of these resources in the code repository through there and some of the official channels too. So if you're wondering how to get updates, that is the best place to do it.
It is. It is. This NAT gateway, telling you, usually you're gonna need like a Backstreet Boys song on, and by the time it's done, it'll be done.
Yep.
Yeah.
While we're waiting, are there any
Yeah.
last questions?
Well, first up, Jackie came up with a much better. It would be in sync because they have the bye-bye thing, right? So that would be the better destroy
Say
soundtrack.
goodbye.
Hey, there we go.
That does make sense now, but yeah.
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 Yeah. Okay. Oh, nice. A Terraform sync episode for it. That's pretty good.
All right. We've got 16 resources that have been destroyed. So
all righty.
I think we're good.
This is the end. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.